Hello, wonderful people. Welcome to Harry FLAX, your story destination. We have an absolute treat for you today. What if the ancient Goblin Council found Harry at age 7 and revealed Dumbledore's 38-year magic suppression? If you're enjoying these stories, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support keeps the stories coming. With that said, let the adventure begin. Chapter 1. The Council's discovery. Harry Potter ducked as his Uncle Vernon's meaty hand swung toward his head. The 7-year-old was getting better at dodging, survival skills learned through painful experience at number 4, Privet Drive. What did I tell you about weird things happening around you, boy? Vernon's face had reached that dangerous purple shade that meant Harry would likely spend the night in his cupboard. I didn't mean to, Harry said, backing against the kitchen counter. The glass just disappeared. I was just looking at the snake, and then, enough. Vernon roared. Dudley's birthday trip to the zoo, ruined. That Brazilian boa practically slithered over my Dudder's feet. And you stand there with that smirk. Harry hadn't been smirking. He'd been terrified. But something inside him had felt a fierce satisfaction when that snake thanked him before slithering away to freedom. It was the third unexplainable incident this week. 3 days in your cupboard. No meals. Vernon grabbed Harry by the collar and dragged him toward the hallway. Vernon, Aunt Petunia's pinched face appeared at the kitchen doorway. The neighbors. Vernon lowered his voice to a harsh whisper. I won't have this FRAKSHNESS in my house, Petunia. It's getting worse. Remember what that letter said? Keep the boys' abilities suppressed. Well, they're not staying suppressed, are they? Harry's ears perked up at this new information as he was shoved roughly into his cupboard. The lock clicked shut, leaving him in darkness except for the thin strip of light beneath the door. Letter? What letter? Who wanted his abilities suppressed? Harry sat on his thin mattress, knees pulled to his chest, and concentrated on the anger building inside him. He'd gotten better at controlling the weird things that happened around him, but sometimes, like today at the zoo, they just burst out of him like a sneeze he couldn't hold back. Hours passed. The Dursleys ate dinner without him. The house grew quiet as they went to bed. Harry's stomach growled painfully as he curled up on his mattress, trying to ignore his hunger. A scraping sound at the cupboard door made him freeze. The lock clicked open, but it wasn't Uncle Vernon's meaty fingers that appeared in the gap. Harry scrambled backward as the door swung open to reveal nothing. Then he looked down. A creature about 3 feet tall stood in the hallway. It had a dome-shaped head, pointed ears, and sharp teeth visible in a grimace that might have been trying to be a smile. Its skin was leathery and pale, and it wore what looked like a miniature suit of armor polished to a dull gleam. Harry Potter, the creature whispered, its voice like rocks scraping together. Greetings. I am Narkic, Scout of the Goblin High Council. Harry blinked. You're a goblin. Narkic's yellow eyes narrowed. You recognize my kind? Interesting. The council will want to know this. He glanced nervously up the stairs. We must speak quickly. Your magic has been triggering our detection wards for weeks now, and today's event was powerful enough to warrant investigation. Magic? Harry whispered. So that's what it is. The Dursleys call it freakishness. Narkic's face contorted with disgust. Muggles. Always afraid of what they don't understand. The goblin produced a small golden object that resembled a pocket watch. We haven't much time. The magical suppression placed upon you is extraordinarily powerful, yet it's beginning to crack. This shouldn't be possible. Magical suppression? Harry echoed, remembering Uncle Vernon's words. Someone's been stopping my magic. Narkic nodded grimly. Placed by Albus Dumbledore himself when you were but an infant. The council has detected the signature. He held out a gnarled hand. Come. The council wishes to speak with you. We can offer answers, and perhaps, freedom. Harry hesitated only briefly. Answers about his strange abilities and the possibility of escape from the Dursleys. The decision was easy. How do we leave without waking them? He asked, taking Narkic's hand. The goblin's grimace widened. Magic, of course. Narkic snapped his fingers, and Harry felt a strange tingling sensation wash over him. When he looked down at his body, he couldn't see it anymore. Disillusionment charm, Narkic explained. Now, silence. Follow me. They crept through the silent house and out into the summer night. In the shadows between two houses stood a strange contraption that looked like a mining cart on legs. Our transport, Narkic said, helping the invisible Harry climb in. Hold tight. The cart shuddered, rose a few feet off the ground, then shot forward with such speed that Harry had to bite his lip to keep from shouting. They zoomed through the darkened streets of Little Whinging, somehow unseen by the few people still out at this late hour. When they reached the outskirts of town, Narkic pulled a lever, and the cart began to transform. Metal panels shifted, gears clicked into place, and suddenly they were inside what appeared to be a small metal room with no windows. Subterranean travel mode, Narkic explained as the floor dropped away beneath them. Harry's stomach lurched as they plummeted into darkness, speeding through what must have been underground tunnels. The journey seemed to last forever, twisting and turning through the earth until Harry lost all sense of direction. Finally, the cart slowed, coming to a stop with a metallic screech. Narkic snapped his fingers again, and Harry felt the tingling sensation fade as his body became visible once more. Welcome, Narkic said, opening the door, to Gringotts. Harry stepped out into a vast, torchlit cavern. The ceiling soared hundreds of feet above them, and intricate tunnels branched off in every direction. They stood on a platform overlooking a bustling underground city. Goblins hurried back and forth, carrying scrolls, gems, and strange instruments. The architecture was unlike anything Harry had ever seen, all sharp angles and precise geometric patterns carved directly into the stone. This way to the High Council, Narkic said, leading Harry down a series of staircases carved into the rock. As they descended, Harry noticed something strange. The goblins they passed stopped and stared, many of them bowing their heads slightly. Some muttered in a harsh, guttural language, while others simply watched in silence. Why are they looking at me like that? Harry whispered. You are Harry Potter, Narkic replied, as if that explained everything. Before Harry could ask what that meant, they arrived at an enormous set of bronze doors inscribed with symbols Harry couldn't read. Narkic pressed his palm against one of the symbols, and the massive doors swung open silently. Inside was a circular chamber lit by floating orbs of blue flame. 7 ancient-looking goblins sat in high-backed stone chairs arranged in a semicircle. In the center of the room stood a pedestal with what looked like a basin filled with silvery liquid. The Goblin High Council, Narkic announced, bowing low. I present Harry Potter, as requested. The central goblin, wearing an intricate gold circlet, leaned forward. Unlike Narkic, this goblin's armor was made of what appeared to be gold, inlaid with blood-red gemstones. His face was a mass of wrinkles, but his eyes were sharp and calculating. I am Ragnarok, king of the Goblin Nation and chairman of the High Council, he said, his voice surprisingly deep. You stand before us at a most unusual hour, Harry Potter, because we have detected most unusual magic surrounding you. Harry swallowed hard. Sir, I don't understand what's happening. Narkic mentioned suppression magic. Ragnarok gestured to the basin. Approach the revealer, young wizard, and we shall show you. Harry cautiously stepped toward the pedestal. The silver liquid inside the basin swirled hypnotically. Look into the revealer, instructed a female goblin to Ragnarok's right. I am Healer Nagnok. What you will see is a representation of your magical core, the center of your power. Harry peered into the swirling silver. At first, he saw only his own reflection, but then the liquid cleared, revealing what looked like a pulsing sphere of brilliant green light. Around the sphere were wrapped hundreds of golden chains, crisscrossing like a net. Several of the chains had snapped, their broken ends floating free. The chains, Nagnok explained, are magical suppressors placed upon you as an infant. They are designed to restrict your access to your magical core. By our calculations, they would have limited your magical growth for approximately 38 years, well into adulthood. Harry looked up, shocked. Someone did this to me. Why? Albus Dumbledore, said Ragnarok, practically spitting the name. Headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Supreme Mugwump of the International Confederation of Wizards, and Chief Warlock of the Wizengamot. A wizard of immense political power. Harry's head spun with the unfamiliar titles. But why would he do this to me? A goblin with a particularly long nose and a monocle spoke up. Control, Mr. Potter. Those with powerful magic are difficult to control. And you. He pointed a long finger at Harry, are potentially very powerful indeed. I don't understand, Harry said. Why would anyone want to control me? I'm nobody. The 7 goblins exchanged glances before Ragnarok sighed deeply. You truly know nothing of your heritage, do you? He asked. Nothing of your parents? Of how they died? Of why you bear that scar? Harry's hand automatically went to the lightning-shaped scar on his forehead. Car crash. My aunt and uncle said. Harsh laughter echoed around the chamber, cutting Harry off. Car crash. Ragnarok's voice dripped with contempt. Lily and James Potter were murdered, Mr. Potter. Murdered by the most feared dark wizard of our time, one who called himself Lord Voldemort. Several of the goblins flinched at the name, but Ragnarok continued without pause. He came to your home on Halloween night, 1981. He killed your father first. Your mother died protecting you. When Voldemort turned his wand on you, a mere baby, and cast the killing curse, something extraordinary happened. The curse rebounded. Voldemort was destroyed, and you survived with nothing but that scar. Harry staggered back, overwhelmed by this revelation. My parents were murdered. By a dark wizard. You are famous in the wizarding world, said Nagnok gently. Known as the boy who lived, the only person ever to survive the killing curse. A beacon of hope in dark times. But that still doesn't explain why Dumbledore would suppress my magic, Harry said, struggling to process everything. Doesn't it? Ragnarok leaned forward. A child with the power to defeat the most terrible Dark Lord in a century. A child who might grow to become even more powerful. Such a child might not be easily molded to another's purpose. And you, Mr. Potter, added the monocled goblin, would be very useful to many people's purposes. Harry looked back at the chain sphere in the basin. Can these chains be removed? That, Ragnarok said with a sharp-toothed smile, is precisely why we brought you here. Ragnarok descended from his high seat and approached Harry. Despite being shorter than the boy, the Goblin King's presence was imposing. The chains are breaking naturally as your magic grows stronger, he explained. This is unprecedented. The suppression magic Dumbledore used should have been unbreakable by a child. Yet your magical core fights against its constraints. What happens if all the chains break on their own? Harry asked. Nagnok stepped forward, her face grave. Catastrophe. When suppression magic fails suddenly, the release of power can be explosive, even fatal. The natural breaking of these chains is what has been causing your increasingly frequent magical incidents. Like the snake at the zoo, Harry whispered. Ragnarok nodded. We propose a controlled breaking of the chains, a ritual that would safely release your magic and allow you to develop naturally. But why would you help me? Harry asked, suspicion finally catching up with his amazement. What do you get out of this? The Goblin King's eyes gleamed with approval. Smart boy. You're right to question our motives. He began pacing in a circle around Harry. The Goblin Nation and wizard kind have a complex relationship. We control the gold, they control the laws. We are classified as beings rather than people. We are denied wands and other rights. That's not fair, Harry said automatically. Indeed, Ragnar stopped his pacing. We see in you, Harry Potter, a potential ally. One who might someday speak for fair treatment of all magical beings. And, his voice dropped lower, one who might remember who helped him when others sought to chain his power. Harry looked around at the 7 ancient faces watching him intently. He thought of the Dursleys, of years spent in a cupboard, of being punished for things he couldn't control. He thought of this Dumbledore person, placing chains on his magic when he was just a baby. If you remove these chains, Harry asked, what happens next? I can't go back to the Dursleys if my magic is fully active. We offer you sanctuary, Ragnar said. Education in our ways and yours. Protection from those who would use you. He extended a gnarled hand. Do we have an agreement? Harry hesitated only briefly before taking the goblin's hand. Yes. Remove the chains. The moment their hands clasped, a bell tolled somewhere deep in the caverns. The other council members rose from their seats and approached the basin. The ritual must begin immediately, Nagnok said, producing a vial of golden liquid. Drink this, Mr. Potter. It will prepare your body for the magical release. Harry accepted the vial and drank its contents in one gulp. It tasted like liquid sunshine and fire mixed together. Now, Ragnarok instructed, place your hand in the revealer. Harry plunged his hand into the silvery liquid. It felt neither wet nor dry, but tingled against his skin like static electricity. The liquid began to glow, brighter and brighter, until the entire chamber was bathed in silver light. The 7 council members formed a circle around Harry and began to chant in that harsh, guttural language he'd heard earlier. The basin's glow shifted from silver to gold, then to a brilliant emerald green that matched the sphere representing Harry's magical core. Inside the basin, Harry could see the golden chains around his core beginning to strain, glowing white-hot at the points of stress. One by one, they began to snap, each break sending a jolt of pain through Harry's body. What's happening? He gasped as another chain broke, sending fire racing up his arm. Your magic fights for freedom, Nagnok said between chants. The pain is temporary. Hold fast. As more chains broke, the pain intensified. Harry gritted his teeth, determined not to scream. But when the largest chain, one wrapped directly around the center of his core, began to crack, he couldn't hold back any longer. His scream echoed through the chamber as that central chain shattered. With it came a magical shockwave that knocked all 7 council members off their feet. The basin cracked down the middle, and Harry collapsed to the floor, unconscious. Miles away in Scotland, in a tower office filled with silver instruments and ancient books, Albus Dumbledore was jolted awake by the sound of an alarm. He rushed to a spindly table where a silver device had begun emitting a high-pitched whine and puffs of dark smoke. Impossible, the old wizard whispered, adjusting his half-moon spectacles. The blood wards. But as he watched in growing horror, the silver instrument began to vibrate violently before exploding into 1,000 tiny pieces. Dumbledore's normally twinkling blue eyes hardened as he swept toward the fireplace. Grabbing a handful of powder, he threw it into the flames, which instantly turned emerald green. Arabella Fig, he called as he stuck his head into the flames. A moment later, he was looking into a living room cluttered with cats and crochet work. A confused-looking older woman in a hairnet appeared. Albus? What time is it? No time, Arabella. Check on the boy immediately. The monitoring charms have failed. Harry awoke to the sound of quiet voices and the sensation of lying on something far softer than his cupboard mattress. He opened his eyes to find himself in a room with walls of polished stone, lying on a bed that seemed to be growing directly out of the floor. Nearby, Nagnok was speaking in hushed tones with another goblin in healer's robes. He's awake, the second healer announced, noticing Harry's movement. Nagnok approached the bed. How do you feel, Mr. Potter? Harry sat up slowly, taking inventory of his body. He felt different. Lighter somehow, as if he'd been carrying a heavy backpack for years and had suddenly set it down. I feel. He started, then gasped as he noticed his hands. A faint green glow seemed to emanate from beneath his skin, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. What's happening to me? Your magic is settling, Nagnok explained. The glow will fade within a few days as your body adjusts to its full power. The ritual was successful, but more violent than anticipated. Your core was far stronger than our initial reading suggested. Harry flexed his fingers, watching the green light ripple beneath his skin. Did I break something up there? I remember a crash. The Revealer. 1,000-year-old artifact, irreplaceable. Nagnok's tone was matter-of-fact, without accusation. Such was the force of your unbound magic. I'm sorry, Harry said quickly. Don't be, came Ragnarok's voice from the doorway. The Goblin King entered, followed by Narkic and 2 goblin guards. It confirms what we suspected. Your potential is extraordinary, even by wizarding standards. Harry swung his legs over the edge of the bed, surprised to find himself steady on his feet. What happens now? Ragnarok approached, studying Harry with those calculating eyes. Now, we begin your education. Magical, historical, political. You have much to learn before you rejoin the wizarding world. Rejoin. But I've never been part of it. Precisely the problem, Ragnarok said. Dumbledore has kept you ignorant of your heritage, your fame, your wealth, your power. He placed you with magic-hating muggles, bound your abilities, and abandoned you to suffering. All to shape you into what he needed you to be. Harry felt anger rise within him, and with it came that strange tingling sensation he now recognized as magic. The green glow beneath his skin intensified, and small objects around the room began to vibrate. Control, Mr. Potter, Nagnok said sharply. Your emotions will trigger your magic until you learn discipline. With effort, Harry pushed the anger down, and the vibrating stopped. Sorry. It's just, why would Dumbledore do all that? What does he want from me? Ragnarok shrugged. That, we do not know. But wizards like Dumbledore play long games. Your status as the boy who lived makes you valuable. Perhaps he intended to mold you into a weapon, a symbol, or a sacrifice. Sacrifice? Harry's voice cracked. Lord Voldemort is not truly gone, Ragnarok said grimly. Our seers are clear on this point. He will return, and when he does, he will seek you out to finish what he started. Harry sank back onto the bed. But I'm just a kid. How am I supposed to face some evil wizard lord? You won't face him as a child, Ragnarok said firmly. You will face him when the time comes, as a fully trained wizard with allies at your back. Including the Goblin Nation, if you honor our agreement. Harry nodded slowly. I'll honor it. You freed me and told me the truth. That's more than any human has done for me. Ragnarok's sharp-toothed smile returned. Excellent. Rest now. Tomorrow, we begin. As the goblins left him to sleep, Harry lay back on the strange stone bed that somehow felt as comfortable as the softest mattress. He held up his hands, watching the green glow pulse beneath his skin. For the first time in his life, Harry Potter felt hope. The next morning, Harry was led through the underground city to a chamber deep beneath Gringotts Bank. Narkic had brought him a set of clothes, black trousers, a green tunic, and soft leather boots that fit him perfectly. These were made overnight? Harry asked, impressed by the craftsmanship. Goblin magic, Narkic said with pride. We excel at creation. The chamber they entered was circular, like the council room, but smaller and lined with bookshelves. In the center stood a stone table surrounded by cushions instead of chairs. On the table lay several objects, a wand, a small knife, and a stack of parchment. Ragnarok was already there, along with Nagnok and the monocled goblin from the council. Mr. Potter, Ragnarok greeted him. Before we proceed further, there is the matter of your guardianship to discuss. Legally, in both Muggle and Wizarding worlds, you remain under the care of your aunt and uncle. Harry's face darkened. I'm not going back there. Nor will you, Ragnarok assured him. However, Dumbledore will have noticed the breaking of his suppression magic. He will be looking for you, and he has the political power to force your return. Can't I just hide here? Harry asked. The monocled goblin snorted. Gringotts is sovereign goblin territory, but even we must adhere to certain treaties. Harboring a wizarding child against the wishes of his legal guardian would violate those treaties. Unless, Ragnarok said, eyes gleaming, we invoke ancient magic that supersedes modern wizarding law. Rockfist, explain. The monocled goblin, Rockfist, adjusted his eyepiece. There exists a rarely used right called magical guardianship by intervention. When a magical child's inherent power has been tampered with in ways that threaten their development or life, any magical being who restores that natural balance may claim temporary guardianship. The key, Nagnok added, is that the tampering must be proven. And the ritual we performed last night provided irrefutable magical evidence of Dumbledore's interference. So you could be my guardians? Harry asked hopefully. Temporarily, Ragnarok clarified. Until you reach magical maturity or select another guardian. During this time, you would live among us, learn from us, but also study wizarding magic to prepare for your eventual return to their society. Harry thought about this. Would I still go to Hogwarts when I turn 11? Ragnarok and Rockfist exchanged a glance. That may be unavoidable, Rockfist admitted. There is an ancient magical registry that records the birth of every magical child in Britain. When you turn 11, a letter will be generated automatically. Failure to attend without formal rejection might trigger unwanted attention. Besides, Ragnarok added, Hogwarts could be valuable. You would learn wizard magic we cannot teach and make connections that might be useful in the future. Harry nodded slowly. So I'd stay here until then? With regular excursions to the surface world, yes, Ragnarok confirmed. You cannot develop properly in isolation. Harry looked at the objects on the table. What's all this for? A ceremony, Nagnok explained. To formalize the magical guardianship and continue the healing process. She picked up the small knife. This will require a drop of your blood. Harry hesitated only briefly before nodding. Let's do it. Nagnok pricked his finger with the knife, allowing 3 drops of blood to fall onto a piece of parchment. The blood spread outward in intricate patterns, forming words in a language Harry couldn't read. Your magical signature, she explained. It confirms your identity and the tampering with your core. Rockfist then handed Harry the wand. This is not your permanent wand, that will come later. This is a training wand, attuned to your current magical state. It will help you learn control. Harry took the wand, and immediately felt a warm sensation spread up his arm. The green glow beneath his skin brightened momentarily, and the wand emitted a shower of gold and silver sparks. Good, Ragnarok said, looking pleased. Now, repeat after me. I, Harry James Potter, acknowledge the intervention of the Goblin Nation in restoring my magical birthright. Harry repeated the words carefully. As he spoke, he felt the magic in the room thicken, like the air before a thunderstorm. I accept the protection and guidance of the Goblin Nation until I reach magical maturity or choose another path. Again, Harry repeated the words. The parchment with his blood began to glow with the same green light that emanated from his skin. I commit to honor this bond and the ancient laws that govern it. After Harry spoke the final phrase, the parchment flashed brightly, then duplicated itself. One copy rolled up and sealed itself with what appeared to be a wax seal bearing the Gringotts crest. It is done, Ragnarok declared. You are now under our protection, legally and magically. Dumbledore cannot force your return to those Muggles without challenging Goblin sovereignty itself, something not even he would dare attempt. For the first time since arriving at Gringotts, Harry felt himself truly relax. He wasn't going back to the cupboard under the stairs. He wasn't going to be punished for his magic anymore. Thank you, he said simply. Ragnar nodded. Now, to business. Your education begins immediately. Rockfist will teach you goblin history and politics. Nagnok will oversee your magical health and teach you control. I will personally instruct you in strategy and leadership. And combat training? Harry asked, surprising himself with the question. Ragnar's eyes gleamed with approval. Indeed. Every goblin learns to fight, and you shall be no exception. Narkic will oversee that aspect of your training. Narkic, who had remained silent by the door, bowed slightly, though Harry thought he detected reluctance in the gesture. When can I learn about my parents? Harry asked. And visit their graves. Nagnok's expression softened slightly. Your family history will be part of your education. As for visiting their resting place in Godric's Hollow, that must wait until we can ensure your safety in public. Dumbledore will be watching for you. Harry nodded, disappointed but understanding. What about my family's possessions? Do I have anything that belonged to them? The Potter Vault, Rockfist said, producing a large golden key from his pocket. One of the oldest and largest in Gringotts. It contains not only gold but family heirlooms, books, and personal effects. You will be granted limited access once your magical control is sufficient. Harry's eyes widened at the thought of an entire vault filled with his family's history. How long will that take? That, said Nagnok, depends entirely on you. The days that followed were the strangest and most challenging of Harry's young life. Mornings began with physical training under Narkic's watchful eye, running through the twisting tunnels beneath Gringotts, climbing rock walls without ropes, and learning the basics of goblin hand-to-hand combat. Wizards rely too heavily on their wands, Narkic explained as he corrected Harry's stance. Take away their wand, and most are helpless. You will not be. Afternoons were spent with Nagnok, learning to control his newly unleashed magic. These sessions often left Harry exhausted and frustrated. Visualize your core, Nagnok instructed as Harry sat cross-legged on a stone floor, eyes closed. See the energy flowing through your body. Direct it, don't let it direct you. It's not working, Harry said through gritted teeth as the green glow beneath his skin pulsed erratically. A nearby candle flared suddenly, its flame shooting 3 feet into the air before extinguishing. Patience, Nagnok said calmly. Your magic has been chained for 6 years. It will take time to tame. Evenings brought lessons with Rockfist on goblin and wizarding history, politics, and culture. Harry learned of the Goblin rebellions, the formation of Gringotts, and the uneasy peace that had existed for centuries between goblins and wizards. We are considered lesser beings by many wizards, Rockfist explained bitterly. Despite our magic, our craftsmanship, our intelligence. We are denied wands by law, restricted from owning land above ground, and subjected to regulations no pure-blood wizard would tolerate. Pure blood? Harry asked. Wizards born to magical parents, Rockfist explained. As opposed to half-bloods like yourself, one magical parent, one muggleborn, or muggleborns, magical children born to non-magical parents. And this matters to people. Rockfist's laugh was harsh. More than you can imagine. The wizard who killed your parents, Lord Voldemort, built his following on the idea of pure-blood supremacy. The irony being, he himself was a half-blood, like you. Once a week, Harry met with Ragnar himself, who tested his progress and adjusted his training accordingly. Your magical growth is exceptional, the Goblin King remarked after Harry successfully levitated a small rock using only his concentration, without the training wand. Though your control still needs work. Harry frowned as the rock wobbled in the air, then shot across the room like a bullet, embedding itself in the stone wall. Sorry, he muttered. Never apologize for power, Ragnar said firmly. Simply master it. As the weeks passed, Harry began to change. The malnourished, frightened boy from Privet Drive was disappearing. Regular meals of goblin cuisine, hearty stews, roasted meats, and strange but delicious underground fungi, put healthy weight on his frame. The physical training built muscle and endurance. His magic, now flowing freely, enhanced his natural healing to the point where Nagnok noted his childhood malnutrition was being reversed at an accelerated rate. Even his eyes improved. One morning, Harry woke to find his vision perfectly clear without his taped-together glasses. A common side effect of unleashed magical healing, Nagnok explained when he reported this change. Your magic is correcting flaws in your body. Not all changes were physical. Harry's mind seemed sharper, his memory more precise. He absorbed information from Rockfist's lessons at a rate that impressed even the stern goblin teacher. You have your mother's intellect, Rockfist commented one evening after Harry correctly recited the terms of the 1752 Goblin Treaty from memory. Lily Evans was brilliant, even by goblin standards. Harry perked up at this rare mention of his mother. You knew her? Rockfist nodded. She came to Gringotts during the war, seeking alliance against Voldemort. Few wizards have ever shown goblins such respect. She spoke our language, knew our customs. Your father was with her, less scholarly, but honorable in his own way. Harry hungered for such scraps of information about his parents, collecting them like precious jewels. But full knowledge of his family history, Ragnarok had decreed, would come only when he was ready. The green glow beneath Harry's skin faded after the first week, but his connection to his magic grew stronger. He learned to feel it flowing through him, to direct it with increasing precision. Small wandless magics became possible, lighting candles, moving objects, even simple transfigurations under Nagnok's guidance. You have an affinity for transformation, she noted as Harry successfully turned a pebble into a small metal ball. Your father was similar, according to our records. Not all his training went smoothly. Combat lessons with Narkic remained a source of frustration on both sides. You think like a human, the goblin scout growled after knocking Harry to the ground for the 20th time. Too tall, too rigid, too predictable. I am human, Harry snapped back, his temper flaring. As it did, the training weapons on the wall rattled ominously. Narkic's eyes narrowed. Control, wizard child. Or would you prefer to return to your cupboard? Harry's magic flared dangerously, and for a moment, the two glared at each other in silent confrontation. Then Harry took a deep breath, calming himself as Nagnok had taught him. I'm sorry, he said quietly. You're right. I need to learn your ways, not force mine. Something like respect flickered in Narkic's yellow eyes. Perhaps you can learn after all. He extended a hand, helping Harry to his feet. Again. But this time, stay low. Use your opponent's height against them. By the end of the month, Harry had earned a grudging respect from his goblin teachers. He was far from mastery in any area, but his progress was undeniable. The day came when Ragnarok announced it was time for Harry's first visit to the Potter Vault. Your control is sufficient, the Goblin King declared. And there are items there that may aid your continued training. The journey to the vault levels was Harry's first time seeing the public areas of Gringotts. Disguised with a hooded cloak and minor glamour charms that altered his facial features, Harry marveled at the vast marble hall where wizards conducted their business, oblivious to the complex city that existed beneath their feet. The wizards see only what we wish them to see, Ragnarok explained as they passed through a hidden door behind a teller's desk. The true extent of Gringotts remains our secret. The ride to the Potter Vault was long, taking them deeper and deeper beneath London. When they finally stopped, they stood before a massive door bearing the Potter crest, a shield with a stag and doe flanking a sword. Place your hand on the door, Rockfist instructed, handing Harry the golden key. It will recognize your blood. Harry did as instructed, feeling a warm tingle as the door recognized him. With a series of clicks and the grinding of unseen gears, the vault door swung open. Harry gasped at what lay beyond. Mountains of gold, silver, and bronze coins filled much of the space, glittering in the light of the torches that ignited automatically. But it was not the wealth that caught Harry's attention. Around the perimeter of the vault stood shelves filled with books, display cases containing jewelry and artifacts, and trunks labeled with the Potter name. "Your inheritance," Ragnarok said quietly. "One of the oldest wizarding families in Britain." Harry stepped inside, overwhelmed by the tangible connection to his family history. On a table near the entrance lay a collection of wands, family heirlooms, Rockfist explained, though none would serve Harry as well as a wand chosen specifically for him. In a glass case, Harry found jewelry that had belonged to his mother, delicate necklaces, rings, and a particularly beautiful emerald pendant that matched the color of his eyes. "She wore that often," Rockfist said, noticing Harry's interest. "Your father gave it to her on their first anniversary." But it was a trunk marked "Lily's Personal" that drew Harry most strongly. Inside, he found his mother's journals, dozens of them, dating back to her first year at Hogwarts. With trembling hands, he opened the earliest one, finding pages filled with a young girl's excited handwriting describing her wonder at discovering the magical world. "I want to take these," Harry said, carefully replacing the journal in the trunk. "To read them?" Ragnarok nodded. "A reasonable request. Select what you wish, but remember we must return before the bank closes to the public." In the end, Harry took the trunk of journals, a photo album he discovered containing moving pictures of his parents, and at Rockfist's suggestion, several books on advanced magic that had belonged to his father. James Potter was particularly skilled in transfiguration and defensive magic, the Goblin explained. "These contain his notes in the margins. They may prove useful when you begin wand work in earnest." As they prepared to leave, Harry noticed a shimmering fabric folded in a corner of the vault. When he touched it, it felt like water woven into cloth. "An invisibility cloak," Rockfist said, eyes widening slightly. "And an exceptional one. Most lose their power over time, but this one. It was your father's most prized possession," Ragnarok added. "He used it extensively during the war against Voldemort." Harry added the cloak to his collection, feeling a connection to his father as he ran his fingers over the fluid material. Their return journey to the Goblin City was made in silence, Harry lost in thoughts of his parents and the life he might have had with them. That night, alone in the chamber that had become his bedroom, he opened his mother's earliest journal and began to read. September 1, 1971, he read aloud in the quiet room. "Today I boarded the Hogwarts Express for the first time. 7 I found a compartment together, but we had to share with 2 boys who were absolutely full of themselves." Harry read until his eyes grew heavy, absorbing his mother's words, her experiences, her gradual understanding of the wizarding world she had entered. In her words, he found echoes of his own confusion, his own wonder. When he finally slept, it was with the journal clutched to his chest and a sense of peace he had never known at Privet Drive. For the first time, Harry Potter dreamed not of green light and mysterious flying motorcycles, but of a red-haired woman with his eyes, writing in a journal and smiling at him across the years. Miles away in Scotland, Albus Dumbledore sat in his office at Hogwarts, surrounded by whirring silver instruments and ancient tomes. Before him on the desk lay reports from the Order members he had dispatched to locate Harry Potter. The boy had vanished completely. The blood wards around Privet Drive had collapsed. The Dursleys, under questioning, revealed only that they had gone to bed with the boy locked in his cupboard, a detail that had caused Minerva McGonagall to nearly hex Vernon Dursley on the spot, and awoken to find him gone. Most concerning of all was the complete shattering of the magical suppressors Dumbledore had placed on the boy as an infant. Those spells had been necessary, the child's magical core had been dangerously unstable after absorbing a portion of Voldemort's power on that Halloween night. Left unchecked, the boy might have become a danger to himself and others. The suppressors were meant to allow his magic to develop slowly, naturally, until he was old enough to control it properly. At least, that was what Dumbledore told himself as he stared at the fragments of the silver monitoring device. "Where are you, Harry?" he murmured, stroking his long white beard thoughtfully. "And more importantly, who has found you?" The lack of dark mark activity suggested it wasn't Death Eaters. The Ministry remained oblivious, Fudge would have been beating down his door if they had located the boy who lived. That left few possibilities, none of them comforting. Dumbledore sighed deeply, reaching for a quill and parchment. It was time to widen the search. Harry Potter must be found before his unbound magic attracted the wrong kind of attention. The carefully constructed plans of the past 6 years lay in ruins. When the boy eventually attended Hogwarts, and the magical registry would ensure he received his letter, he would not be the malleable, grateful child Dumbledore had anticipated. Someone else had reached him first, someone who had broken Dumbledore's spells and, most likely, revealed truths the boy was not yet ready to hear. A setback, Dumbledore murmured to himself as he began to write instructions to his most trusted allies. But not insurmountable. The prophecy remains. The boy's path is fixed. But as he wrote, a flicker of doubt crossed the ancient wizard's face. For the first time since placing baby Harry on the Dursleys' doorstep, Albus Dumbledore wondered if he had made a grave miscalculation. Chapter 2, The Underground Education, Duck. Griphook barked. Harry dropped flat as the practice blade whistled over his head. He rolled left, popped up, and lunged forward with his own dagger, stopping just short of Griphook's leather armor. Point, called Narkic from the sidelines. Griphook's yellow eyes narrowed. Lucky strike, wizard. That's the third lucky strike today, Harry shot back, grinning. Maybe it's skill, not luck. Against a goblin warrior? Unlikely. But Griphook's mouth twitched in what Harry now recognized as a suppressed smile. A month into Harry's new life beneath Gringotts, and his relationship with his reluctant training partner had evolved from open hostility to grudging respect to something approaching friendship. It helped that Harry soaked up goblin fighting techniques like a sponge, adapting his human frame to the low-centered, unpredictable movements that Narkic drilled into him daily. Again, Narkic ordered, not one for excessive praise. Griphook, adjust your guard. Potter, mind your footwork. They reset their positions. Harry's muscles burned pleasantly from exertion, so different from the painful exhaustion of chores at the Dursleys. Here, his body grew stronger with purpose. Even his lightning scar seemed less prominent now that his face had filled out with proper nutrition. Griphook attacked first this time, feinting high before striking low. Harry anticipated the move, Griphook favored this combination, and sidestepped instead of blocking. He countered with a swift strike toward Griphook's exposed side. Their training daggers met with a crack, and they grappled briefly before breaking apart. Enough, Narkic called. Acceptable progress. Potter, you're due with Healer Nagnok. Griphook, sharpen those blades properly before storing them. Harry wiped sweat from his forehead with his sleeve. Same time tomorrow. Unless you break something before then, Griphook replied dryly, taking Harry's practice dagger. Harry grinned and headed for the tunnel that led to Nagnok's healing chambers. The underground city of Uruk-hai had initially been a confusing maze, but he navigated it confidently now. Goblins nodded respectfully as he passed, still strange after years of being invisible at Privet Drive. Nagnok was waiting with a strange contraption on her stone table, a crystal suspended in a frame of gold wire. Right on time, Mr. Potter. Today we test the stability of your core. Harry sat cross-legged on the cushion she indicated. Is it still growing? Exponentially, Nagnok said, positioning the crystal above his head. Which remains, unprecedented. She didn't need to explain why. They'd had this conversation before, after Harry had accidentally shattered every glass vial in her workshop during a control exercise. His magic wasn't just unbound, it was expanding. As if making up for lost time, his core grew faster than Nagnok's instruments could calibrate. The suppression spells had apparently created a pressure cooker effect that no one, not even Dumbledore, had anticipated. Focus on channeling your magic through your center, Nagnok instructed. Not too much. Like opening a tap halfway. Harry closed his eyes, visualizing his core as a sphere of green energy in his chest. He'd gotten better at controlling the flow, directing just enough magic to make the crystal glow without overloading it. The room filled with emerald light. "Good," Nagnok murmured, making adjustments to the wire frame. "Now release it slowly." Harry eased back on the flow until the crystal dimmed. Opening his eyes, he found Nagnok studying him with uncharacteristic intensity. "What? You exceeded last week's measurement by 30%, she said. "Your growth rate is accelerating rather than stabilizing." Harry frowned. "Is that bad?" "It's unknown territory," she corrected. "Most wizards reach magical maturity gradually over years. You're experiencing spurts that should be impossible without." She trailed off, scribbling notes on a parchment. "Without what?" Harry pressed. Nagnok sighed. "Without external magical infusion. Yet you haven't been near any major magical sources besides our city's ambient magic, which shouldn't have this effect on a human. Could it be related to Voldemort? To what happened when he tried to kill me?" Nagnok set down her quill. "A theory worth investigating. Ragnarok has authorized access to restricted texts on magical transference. But for now, we focus on control." The rest of the session involved Harry practicing precise manipulations, lighting specific candles in sequence, moving water between cups without spilling a drop, changing the color of a feather one barb at a time. "You're improving," Nagnok said as Harry successfully turned a feather from white to rainbow patterned. "But your wandless abilities remain unusually strong. Most wizard children can manage accidental magic only. Will I still need a wand at Hogwarts?" "Unquestionably. Wandless magic consumes more energy and lacks precision for complex spell work. Your training wand helps, but you'll need a proper one matched to your specific magical signature." Harry twirled the plain wooden training wand between his fingers. It conducted his magic adequately but felt like using someone else's glove, functional but not quite right. "When can I get my own wand?" "When Ragnarok determines the time is right for you to visit Ollivanders." "Not yet." Dumbledore watches the wand maker closely. Harry's mood darkened at the mention of Dumbledore. His anger toward the man who had suppressed his magic and left him with the Dursleys had only grown as he learned more about the wizarding world. "Has he stopped looking for me?" Nagnok's expression turned grim. "Quite the opposite. Our surface contacts report increased activity. The old wizard grows desperate." After finishing with Nagnok, Harry headed to the great library for his lessons with Rockfist. The massive cavern housed thousands of tomes on stone shelves that reached toward the stalactite-studded ceiling. Globes of blue fire provided reading light, while goblin scribes worked at stone tables, copying ancient texts. Rockfist waited with a stack of books and a scowl that Harry now knew was his default expression. "You're 3 minutes late." "Sorry, Nagnok's session ran long." "Core testing." Rockfist's expression shifted to interest. "Results?" 30% increase." She seemed concerned. Rockfist adjusted his monocle. "We'll add magical theory to today's lesson, then. But first, wizarding politics." Harry groaned but sat down. Politics was his least favorite subject, but Rockfist insisted it was essential. "The Wisengamot consists of how many seats?" Rockfist began. 50 hereditary seats held by ancient and noble houses, 25 elected seats, and 15 appointed by the minister, Harry recited. "And the Potter family holds 1 hereditary seat, currently held in trust by my magical guardian, which was." Harry trailed off as he connected the dots. "Dumbledore has been voting with my family's seat." "Indeed." Rockfist pushed a document across the table. "Our legal department obtained the voting records. For the past 6 years, the Potter vote has consistently aligned with Dumbledore's progressive faction." Harry scanned the parchment, understanding only portions of the legal terminology. "Can we stop this?" "Already done," Rockfist said with satisfaction. The magical guardianship transfer automatically froze the Potter seat. Dumbledore can neither vote it nor access the associated political accounts. Harry's eyebrows shot up. Political accounts? Separate from my vault? Naturally. Old families maintain campaign funds, charitable trusts, and influence accounts. The Potters, while not as wealthy as the Malfoys or Blacks, maintain significant political capital. Capital Dumbledore has been deploying to support his agenda. Harry absorbed this new information, adding it to his mental list of Dumbledore's manipulations. The man's reach extended far beyond just placing Harry with the Dursleys. Now, Rockfist continued, explain the difference between the International Confederation of Wizards and the European Magical Union. The politics lesson eventually gave way to magical theory, with Rockfist explaining the complex relationship between intent, incantation, and wand movement. Despite the dry subject matter, Harry found himself fascinated by the underlying principles. Magic responds to belief and visualization, Rockfist explained. The words and wand movements are focusing tools, but a sufficiently powerful wizard can overcome poor technique through sheer will. Is that what I've been doing with wandless magic? Precisely. Your intent overpowers the need for traditional focusing methods. Dangerous in complex spellwork, but useful in combat situations where split-second responses matter more than finesse. The lesson continued until a young goblin messenger arrived, bowing deeply before delivering a sealed note to Rockfist. The goblin's expression darkened as he read it. Lesson concluded early today, Potter. Ragnarok requires your presence immediately. Harry felt a spike of anxiety. What's happened? Dumbledore is here. In Gringotts. The private meeting room off the main Gringotts floor buzzed with tension. Harry watched through a hidden viewing panel, his heart hammering against his ribs. A disillusionment charm and the clever goblin architecture kept him completely hidden while allowing him to observe the confrontation. Albus Dumbledore sat across from Ragnarok, looking every bit the powerful wizard from the chocolate frog cards Harry had recently discovered. Long silver beard, half-moon spectacles, and brightly colored robes that seemed deliberately calculated to project eccentric harmlessness. But Harry saw through the facade now, this was the man who had bound his magic and abandoned him to abuse. Director Ragnarok, Dumbledore was saying, his voice calm and measured, surely we can discuss this reasonably. A magical child has gone missing, a child of great importance to our world. The affairs of wizards concern us only when they intersect with Gringotts business, Ragnarok replied coldly. We have no information regarding Harry Potter's whereabouts. Not technically a lie, Harry noted. He wasn't missing, he was exactly where he chose to be. Indeed. Dumbledore stroked his beard. Then perhaps you can explain why the blood wards at his residence collapsed simultaneously with certain magical protections I had placed upon the boy. I cannot explain what I do not know, Ragnarok said, examining his long fingers. Though I find it interesting that you admit to placing magical restrictions on a child without guardian consent. Dumbledore's eyes narrowed slightly, though his genial expression never wavered. Those protections were for Harry's safety. His magical core was destabilized by the events of that Halloween night. A medical necessity, then. Strange that no healer certification appears in the boy's records regarding such treatment. A flash of irritation crossed Dumbledore's face before disappearing behind his benign mask. The circumstances were exceptional. Healer involvement would have risked exposure when the boy needed absolute anonymity. How convenient, Ragnarok said dryly. Harry felt a surge of gratitude toward the Goblin King. Ragnarok was systematically dismantling Dumbledore's justifications while revealing nothing about Harry's presence. Director, Dumbledore leaned forward, his voice taking on an urgent tone, Harry Potter is in danger. His magical signature recently flared across our detection networks with unprecedented strength. Without proper guidance, he risks harming himself and others. Surely if you've encountered any trace of such magic, Gringotts detection systems are confidential, Ragnarok interrupted. As are our client relationships. However, I can assure you that no underage wizard has been harmed within our jurisdiction. Dumbledore steepled his fingers, changing tactics. Perhaps I should make myself clearer. The Ministry is quite concerned about Harry's disappearance. Minister Fudge has suggested a full audit of Gringotts' operations if the boy is not located soon. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Ragnar's expression hardened into something dangerous. Threats, Headmaster. How disappointing. The Treaty of 1734 explicitly prohibits Ministry interference in Goblin banking operations. Does Minister Fudge truly wish to precipitate the first Goblin-Wizard conflict in 2 centuries over a single missing child? From his hidden vantage point, Harry saw a muscle twitch in Dumbledore's jaw. The old wizard was genuinely frustrated. Perhaps for the first time in many years, he wasn't controlling the conversation. No one wants conflict, Director. I'm simply expressing concern for a child who. The doors burst open, and a young goblin rushed in, speaking rapidly in gobbledygook. Harry recognized enough words to understand the message: unauthorized magic detected in the main hall. Ragnar's eyes flicked briefly toward Harry's hiding place before addressing the messenger. Contain it. I'll be there shortly. Dumbledore rose. If there's a situation, perhaps I can assist. Unnecessary, Ragnar said sharply. A minor magical accident with a client's artifact. Nothing our security can't handle. But Dumbledore was already moving toward the door, concern etched on his face. Harry felt panic rising. Was this a diversion to search for him? He pressed against the wall, making himself as small as possible despite his disillusionment charm. The door closed behind them, leaving Harry alone in the hidden observation room. He counted his heartbeats, unsure whether to stay put or retreat deeper into Goblin territory. Before he could decide, the panel slid open to reveal Griphook. Follow. Quickly, the young goblin hissed. Harry didn't hesitate. They raced through a hidden passage behind the walls of Gringotts, the sounds of commotion from the main hall growing fainter. What happened? Harry asked as they descended a spiral staircase. One of Dumbledore's agents created a distraction, some kind of tracking spell. They're trying to sweep the bank for your magical signature. They reached the lower levels where the cart tracks ran like spider webs through the caverns. Griphook led him to a maintenance shaft where a small handcart waited on a side track. Get in. This route bypasses the main transport lines. Harry climbed into the cart, and Griphook jumped in after him, releasing the brake. They shot into darkness, the cart accelerating at a speed that forced Harry to grab the sides. Won't they detect us moving through the tunnels? Harry shouted over the rushing air. Not this way, Griphook called back. Maintenance tunnels are shielded from detection spells. Old precaution from the rebellions. The cart took a sharp turn, then plunged into a near-vertical descent that made Harry's stomach lurch. Just when he thought they'd crash into the rocky floor, Griphook yanked a lever, and the cart leveled out, shooting through a narrow opening that closed behind them with a grinding of stone. They emerged in a section of Urukai that Harry had never seen before, a dimly lit cavern filled with what appeared to be ancient machinery. Massive gears turned slowly overhead, and the walls were lined with crystal formations that pulsed with blue light. The heart of Gringotts, Griphook explained, helping Harry from the cart. The bank's defense center. No wizard has seen this place in centuries. Ragnar waited for them, along with Nagnok and several heavily armored goblin guards. Dumbledore nearly breached our security, Ragnar said without preamble. His agent activated a powerful detection charm designed to locate your magical signature. Had you been anywhere in the public areas, he would have found you. But I was hidden, Harry protested. The disillusionment charm would not have concealed your magical core from his detection spell, Nagnok interrupted. Your power signature is distinctive, Mr. Potter. And growing more so daily. What happens now? Harry asked, looking around the strange chamber. Will Dumbledore search the lower levels? Ragnarok gave a sharp-toothed smile. He would need an army to breach these depths, and even then, he would fail. No, he will leave empty-handed today, but this confrontation confirms our suspicions. He is growing desperate to reclaim you. Harry paced the stone floor, frustration building. I'm tired of hiding. Why can't I just tell everyone what he did? Go public with it? And who would believe you over Albus Dumbledore? Ragnarok asked. The greatest wizard of the age against an unknown child. No, we need irrefutable evidence and the proper timing. Besides, Ragnarok added, your magical education is far from complete. Facing Dumbledore now would be premature. Harry knew they were right, but the waiting grated on him. Every day spent underground, though valuable for his training, was another day Dumbledore controlled the narrative above. There is good news, Griphook offered unexpectedly. The confrontation gave us legal grounds to formally invoke protective custody. Ragnarok nodded. Indeed. Dumbledore's admission that he placed unauthorized restrictions on your magic constitutes interference with inherent magic, a serious violation under the 1803 treaty. Our legal department has already filed the paperwork with the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. What does that mean practically? Harry asked. It means, Ragnarok said with satisfaction, that even if Dumbledore locates you, he cannot legally force your return to those Muggles without challenging Goblin sovereignty itself, a battle he cannot win without triggering open conflict. For the first time since the alarm had sounded, Harry felt himself relax. So I'm officially under Goblin protection now? Until you reach magical maturity or choose another path, Ragnarok confirmed. The filing is magically binding. Griphook shifted uncomfortably. There's still the matter of his Hogwarts attendance. The magical registry, one challenge at a time, Ragnarok cut him off. For now, we intensify Potter's training. If today proved anything, it's that time grows short. The encounter with Dumbledore changed Harry's training regimen dramatically. Combat lessons doubled, with Griphook now joining Narkic as a full-time instructor. Magical control sessions with Ragnarok grew more demanding as she pushed him to mask his magical signature, a skill few adult wizards mastered. Imagine your core as a banked fire, she instructed during a particularly grueling session. Not extinguished, but controlled, giving off minimal heat and light. Harry sat cross-legged in the center of a ring of detection crystals, each programmed to flare if they sensed his magic. For an hour, he concentrated on containing his power, drawing it inward until the crystals remained dark. Better, Ragnarok said when he finally succeeded. But still not enough to fool Dumbledore's detection spells. Again. By the third week after the confrontation, Harry's days had settled into an exhausting routine, physical training at dawn, magical control before midday, combat training in the afternoon, and political/historical education in the evenings. Only his late-night hours remained his own, which he devoted to reading his mother's journals by wandlight. September 15, 1971, he read one night, curled up on his bed with Lily's first-year journal. Professor McGonagall says I have a natural talent for transfiguration. She seemed surprised when I managed to turn my match into a needle on the second try. Sev is jealous, though he won't admit it. He's better at potions, but I'm catching up fast. Harry treasured these glimpses into his mother's life, her friendships, her classes, her growing awareness of the wizarding world's prejudices. The mysterious Sev featured prominently in early entries, clearly a childhood friend who attended Hogwarts with her. But something had happened between them by fifth year, as mentions of him grew sparse and eventually disappeared entirely. He learned that his father, James Potter, had started as something of a nemesis in his mother's early Hogwarts years, an arrogant torag, she called him repeatedly, before gradually maturing into someone she respected and eventually loved. The transformation fascinated Harry, who hungrily absorbed every detail about his parents. One rainy evening, as Harry practiced a particularly complex goblin shielding charm under Narkic's critical eye, Griphook entered the training room with an unusual expression. Ragnarok requests your presence, he announced. Both of you. Narkic frowned. We're in the middle of shield training. It's important, Griphook insisted. A development above ground. They followed Griphook to Ragnar's private chambers, a rare honor that immediately signaled the seriousness of the situation. The Goblin King sat at a massive desk carved from a single piece of black stone, studying what appeared to be a wizarding newspaper. "The Daily Prophet," Ragnar said, pushing the paper toward them as they entered. "Today's edition." Harry picked it up and felt his stomach drop at the headline, "Boy Who Lived Missing, Dumbledore Confirms Harry Potter Disappearance." Beneath it was a baby photo of Harry and speculation about his whereabouts, along with quotes from ministry officials expressing grave concern. "He's gone public," Harry muttered, scanning the article. "Why now?" "Because his private search has failed," Ragnar said. "By making this public, he accomplishes several goals, mobilizing the wizarding public to watch for you, pressuring the ministry to allocate resources, and most importantly, painting himself as the concerned guardian rather than the manipulator." Harry's grip tightened on the newspaper. "They make it sound like I've been kidnapped." "Note the careful phrasing," Ragnar pointed to a specific paragraph. "Removed from the loving care of his relatives. Establishing a narrative that you were happy with those muggles." Harry snorted. "Loving care. Right. There's more," Griphook said. "Turn to page 3. Harry flipped the pages to find a smaller article with the heading, "Gringotts Denies Knowledge of Potter Whereabouts." It detailed Dumbledore's routine financial inquiry at Gringotts and the bank's suspicious refusal to allow ministry access to Potter family records. "He's trying to pressure us through public opinion," Ragnar observed. "Clever, but ineffective. Goblins do not bow to wizard media." "What's our next move?" Harry asked, setting down the paper. Ragnar steepled his fingers. "Acceleration. You've progressed well, but recent events suggest we have less time than anticipated. It's time you visited your family vault again, not just for heirlooms this time, but for practical preparation." "What am I looking for?" "Your family grimoire," Narkic said unexpectedly. "All ancient wizarding families maintain one, a collection of spells, potions, and knowledge passed through generations." Harry looked up in surprise. "I didn't see anything like that last time." "You wouldn't have," Ragnar said. "Family grimoires are typically hidden, protected by blood magic. Only a Potter by blood can reveal it. That night's expedition to the Potter Vault was conducted with even greater secrecy than before. Instead of using the main cart system, they traveled through the maintenance tunnels, emerging through a hidden entrance at the deepest levels where the oldest vaults were kept. The Potter Vault predates Gringotts itself," Rockfist explained as they approached the familiar door. "It was one of the first transferred here when the bank was established in 1474. Inside, the vault appeared as Harry remembered, mountains of gold, artifacts on shelves, trunks of personal belongings. But this time, he had a specific purpose. "Where would the grimoire be hidden?" he asked, looking around the vast space. "Family grimoires respond to blood and intent," Rockfist said. "Stand in the center of the vault and focus on your desire to access your family's magical knowledge. Then offer a drop of blood." Harry moved to the center of the vault, where a circular pattern was barely visible in the stone floor. Nagnok handed him a small silver knife similar to the one used in the guardianship ritual. Taking a deep breath, Harry pricked his finger and allowed a single drop of blood to fall onto the center of the pattern. "I, Harry James Potter, seek the knowledge of my ancestors." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the floor began to glow with a soft golden light. The circular pattern expanded, lines of light spreading outward like a spiderweb. Where the lines met the walls, sections of stone slid away to reveal hidden compartments. "Impressive security," Narkic muttered appreciatively. From the largest compartment rose a stone pedestal bearing a massive leather-bound book. The cover was embossed with the Potter family crest, and the edges of the pages gleamed with gold leaf. Harry approached cautiously, half expecting additional protections. When his fingers touched the cover, a warm sensation rushed up his arm, not unlike holding his training wand. The book recognized him. "The Potter family grimoire," he whispered, carefully opening to the first page. The contents exceeded his expectations. Beyond spells and potions, the grimoire contained detailed family history dating back to the 12th century, accounts of battles fought, alliances made, and most intriguingly, research notes on original magic developed by Potter ancestors. My father added to this, Harry said with excitement, finding entries in a handwriting he recognized from the margins of James Potter's schoolbooks. Look, notes on something called the Marauder's Map and Advanced Human Transfiguration. Your mother contributed as well, Nagnock observed, pointing to sections written in Lily's distinctive script. Charm innovations and potion modifications. The other hidden compartments revealed additional treasures, enchanted armor sized for a child that would grow with its wearer, specialized wand holsters with anti-summoning charms, and a collection of emergency port keys designed to transport the user to various Potter properties. Can I take the grimoire? Harry asked, reluctant to part with this new connection to his family. Rockfist shook his head. Family grimoires are typically bound to their vaults by old magic. However, he produced a small leather-bound book from his pocket. This copying journal will allow you to transfer specific sections for study. By the time they left the vault, Harry had copied dozens of pages focused on defensive magic, concealment spells, and the specialized Potter family magic that James had noted was particularly useful for tight situations. The grimoire expedition marked a turning point in Harry's training. With access to his family's magical knowledge, his lessons took on new dimensions. The Potter-specific spells worked better for him than standard wizarding magic, as if his core was naturally attuned to them. One spell in particular, the Potter Shield, became his specialty. Unlike the standard Protego, this shield absorbed incoming magic rather than deflecting it, actually strengthening with each spell it blocked. Your great-grandfather Fleamont developed this during his duels with Grindelwald's supporters, Nagnock explained as Harry successfully maintained the shield against her test hexes. It's particularly effective against multiple opponents. Harry's combat training advanced rapidly as well. The Potter grimoire contained family fighting techniques that complemented the Goblin methods Narcic had been teaching him. Where Goblin fighting emphasized low stances and unpredictable movements, the Potter style focused on mobility and counterattacking. Your ancestors were battlefield wizards, Narcic grudgingly admitted after Harry successfully combined both styles in a training session. Their techniques have merit. From Griphook, who had become Harry's closest friend among the Goblins, this would have been enthusiastic praise. From Narcic, it was unprecedented. 3 months into his life with the Goblins, Harry barely resembled the scrawny, frightened boy from Privet Drive. Regular meals and intense physical training had transformed his body. His magic, growing daily in strength and precision, gave him a confidence that showed in his movements and speech. Even his infamous scar had faded somewhat, as if his unleashed magic was healing old wounds. But the changes weren't just physical. Harry's mind had expanded through Rockfist's relentless education and his own voracious reading. He understood wizard-goblin politics better than most adult wizards, could recite the major magical treaties from memory, and had developed a nuanced view of magical history that acknowledged perspectives beyond the wizard-centric narratives. Most importantly, he'd found a sense of belonging he'd never known with the Dursleys. The Goblins were not demonstrative, their culture valued competence over comfort, but Harry had earned their respect, and in the harsh meritocracy of Goblin society, that meant something. One evening, as Harry and Griphook practiced knife-throwing in a lower training room, the young Goblin asked an unexpected question. "Do you miss the surface?" Harry paused, a throwing knife balanced in his hand. "Sometimes. I miss the sun, the open sky." He launched the knife, hitting just left of center on the target. But not enough to go back to how things were. Griphook nodded, his own throw striking dead center. "Show off," Harry muttered, making Griphook bare his teeth in what Harry now recognized as a grin. "The council is considering a test," Griphook said casually, selecting another knife. "A supervised excursion to Diagon Alley." Harry nearly dropped his knife. "Seriously? When?" "Soon, if you pass Nagnock's next evaluation." Your magical signature masking has improved. Harry felt a surge of excitement. After months underground, the prospect of visiting the wizarding shopping district he'd read about in his mother's journals was thrilling. Would it be safe? Dumbledore would be looking for an unaccompanied boy with an obvious scar and unchecked magical signature, Griphook finished. Not a goblin-escorted client with controlled magic and altered features. The possibility energized Harry's training. He doubled down on his signature masking exercises, practiced maintaining multiple glamour charms simultaneously, and perfected quick-draw techniques with his training wand. When the day of Nagnak's evaluation arrived, Harry was ready. In a special evaluated chamber designed to detect the faintest magical emissions, he demonstrated perfect control, reducing his magical signature to a barely detectable flicker while simultaneously casting a series of increasingly complex spells. Remarkable progress, Nagnak concluded. Your control now exceeds many adult wizards. Harry couldn't help the grin that spread across his face. So does that mean? Nagnak's expression remained impassive. Ragnarok will make the final decision. But yes, I believe you are ready for a controlled surface excursion. 2 days later, Harry stood in a preparation room near Gringotts' upper levels, practically vibrating with excitement. Griphook adjusted the enchanted cloak that would help maintain Harry's disguise, while Nagnok applied glamour charms to alter his facial features. Remember the rules, Ragnarok said sternly. Stay between your escorts at all times. Maintain signature suppression. Speak to no one unnecessarily. If you feel your control slipping, signal immediately for return. I understand, Harry promised, watching his reflection transform as Nagnok's charms took effect. His distinctive green eyes turned brown, his black hair lightened to sandy blonde, and his scar disappeared completely. How long will the disguise last? He asked, turning his head to examine the changes. 4 hours, Nagnok replied. More than sufficient for your approved itinerary. The approved stops included Flourish and Blot's bookshop, quality Quidditch supplies, after Harry had expressed interest in the wizarding sport mentioned in his mother's journals, and a brief visit to Fortescue's ice cream parlor as a reward if all went well. Notably absent was Ollivander's wand shop, still deemed too risky given the wandmaker's connection to Dumbledore. Your cover identity is Henry Blackwood, son of a minor pureblood family currently being shown investment opportunities by Gringotts representatives, Rockfist explained, handing Harry identification documents that would pass casual inspection. If separated from your escorts, return directly to the bank. I won't get separated, Harry assured him, tucking the documents into his pocket. The group that emerged from Gringotts into the October sunshine consisted of Harry in his disguise, Griphook and another goblin named Silvertooth in formal bank attire, and Narkik concealed as a human guard through goblin glamour magic. To casual observers, they appeared to be a wealthy client's son with a standard bank escort. Harry fought to maintain his composure as they stepped into Diagon Alley, though inside he was overwhelmed. The narrow, winding street bustled with activity, witches and wizards in colorful robes, shop windows displaying everything from self-stirring cauldrons to animated toy broomsticks, owls swooping between buildings carrying packages and letters. It was everything Lily had described in her journals and more. Magic performed openly, casually, joyfully. So different from the fearful secrecy of Privet Drive or the practical functionality of goblin magic. Your signature, Griphook murmured, noticing Harry's distraction. Harry quickly restored his magical suppression, which had begun to slip in his excitement. Sorry. Their first stop was Flourish and Blots, where Harry selected books on magical theory, defense, and wizarding culture that weren't available in the Goblin library. To maintain his cover, Griphook handled all transactions while Harry browsed, appearing to be a young wizard killing time during his father's banking business. At Quality Quidditch Supplies, Harry gazed in wonder at the Nimbus 1700 displayed in the window. His mother's journals mentioned James Potter's talent as a chaser, and Harry felt an immediate connection to the sport his father had loved. We could arrange flying lessons in one of the larger caverns, Griphook said quietly, noticing Harry's interest. Though goblin methods differ from wizard broomsticks. Everything was going smoothly until they passed the Daily Prophet office. A fresh edition was being distributed, and the headline made Harry freeze mid-step. Potter trust frozen. Dumbledore questions Goblin interference. Griphook cursed softly in gobbledygook and tried to usher Harry along, but he was already reaching for a copy. The article detailed Dumbledore's public questioning of Gringotts' management of the Potter estate, implying that goblins might be exploiting Harry's disappearance for financial gain. It included an emotional appeal from Dumbledore about his deep concern for Harry's well-being, and hopes that the boy would be found safe and returned to the protection arranged by his parents. Anger surged through Harry, his careful signature suppression wavering as his magic responded to his emotions. A nearby shop window vibrated slightly. "Control," Narkic hissed, gripping Harry's shoulder. "Not here." With effort, Harry reined in his magic and allowed himself to be guided away from the newspaper stand. But the damage was done. His momentary magical flair, though small, had been noticeable to those sensitive to such things. Including the tall, black-robed figure watching from the doorway of Obscurus Books across the street. "We're leaving," Silvertooth announced, having spotted the observer. "Now." They altered their route back to Gringotts, taking a more circuitous path through side alleys to avoid potential followers. The promised ice cream stop was forgotten as they hurried Harry back toward the bank's imposing white facade. Just as the bank came into view, a figure stepped into their path, a severe-looking witch with square spectacles and emerald-green robes. "Excuse me," she addressed Griphook directly, her Scottish accent pronounced, "but I must speak with your client." Griphook's hand moved to the concealed dagger at his belt. "Our client's business is confidential, madam. I am Professor Minerva McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress of Hogwarts," she said, her eyes fixed on Harry's disguised form. "And I believe your young companion might have information regarding a missing student." Harry maintained his blank expression, heart pounding. McGonagall featured prominently in his mother's journals, strict but fair, Lily's favorite professor and head of Gryffindor House. "You are mistaken," Narkic said, stepping forward in his human disguise. "This is Henry Blackwood, here with his father on banking business." McGonagall's lips thinned. "Indeed? Then perhaps young Mr. Blackwood could explain why his magical signature, despite impressive suppression, bears a striking resemblance to one I taught to cast his first transfiguration spell over 20 years ago." Harry's breath caught. She was talking about his father. "Step aside, madam," Silvertooth said firmly. "We are on Gringotts' business." McGonagall seemed to consider pressing the issue, but after a tense moment, she inclined her head slightly. "Very well. But do inform your client that some matters transcend banking confidentiality. Particularly when they concern children's welfare." She moved aside, allowing them to pass. Harry could feel her eyes on his back all the way to the bank steps. Once inside the safety of Gringotts, Harry let out a shaky breath. "That was close. She recognized something about my magic." "Family magical signatures have distinctive patterns," Nagnok explained when they returned to the lower levels and reported the incident. "Your core bears similarities to your father's, despite Dumbledore's interference." Professor McGonagall, having taught James Potter for 7 years, would be sensitive to those patterns. Ragnok paced his chamber, clearly disturbed by the development. Dumbledore's net tightens. The newspaper article, McGonagall's presence, coordinated pressure. "We should have anticipated this," Rockfist admitted. "The longer Potter remains missing, the more desperate Dumbledore becomes." "Did I mess up?" Harry asked, guilt creeping into his voice. "When I saw that headline, your control lapsed momentarily," Nagnok said. "But that alone wouldn't have alerted McGonagall. More likely, Dumbledore has placed detection charms throughout the alley tuned specifically to your magical signature." Despite the close call, Harry's excursion was deemed valuable experience. His disguise had worked, his control had been mostly maintained, and he'd gotten his first taste of the wizarding world he would eventually rejoin. But the encounter with McGonagall raised new questions about his future. Hogwarts loomed less than 4 years away, and with it, inevitable confrontation with Dumbledore. That night, Harry sat in his chamber reading his mother's descriptions of her early days at the magical school. Her wonder at the enchanted ceiling of the Great Hall, her pride at being sorted into Gryffindor, her determination to prove that a Muggleborn could excel in the magical world. Professor McGonagall says I have natural talent, Lily had written. She says magic isn't about blood but about understanding, practice, and intent. Harry thought about McGonagall's penetrating gaze in Diagon Alley. She had recognized something of his father in him, despite never having met Harry himself. Would she be an ally when he eventually attended Hogwarts? Or would her loyalty to Dumbledore override any connection to his parents? As he contemplated these questions, a knock came at his door. Griphook entered, carrying a package wrapped in plain brown paper. From Ragnarok, the young goblin said, placing it on Harry's bed. A recognition of your progress. Inside, Harry found an ornate dagger with a handle of polished black stone and a blade of something that wasn't quite steel. It had an unusual bluish tint that caught the light. Goblin forged, Griphook explained with evident pride. Enchanted to return to its owner's hand when summoned. A warrior's blade. Harry tested the balance, finding it perfect for his hand despite being crafted for goblin proportions. This is. I'm honored. Griphook nodded. The council sees your value, Potter. Not just as a political ally but as a warrior in training. His yellow eyes gleamed. I told Ragnarok you wouldn't embarrass me. You vouched for me. Don't make me regret it, Griphook replied, but there was no real heat in his words. Combat training tomorrow at dawn. Bring the blade. After Griphook left, Harry examined the dagger more carefully, noting the subtle runes etched along the flat of the blade. According to his goblin cultural studies, receiving a crafted weapon was no small gesture, it signified acceptance, recognition of worth. 6 months ago, he'd been a neglected child locked in a cupboard, his magic suppressed, his heritage hidden. Now he stood as an apprentice warrior under goblin protection, wielding family magic thought lost, preparing for a confrontation that would shape the wizarding world. I won't waste this chance, he promised himself, carefully placing the dagger beside his bed. I won't be Dumbledore's pawn or the Dursleys' punching bag. Not ever again. In his tower office at Hogwarts, Albus Dumbledore sat across from Minerva McGonagall, his expression grave as she recounted her encounter in Diagon Alley. You're certain? He asked when she finished. As certain as I can be without seeing the boy's true face, McGonagall replied. The magical signature was muted, controlled, but with unmistakable Potter characteristics. James had that same resonance. Dumbledore stroked his beard thoughtfully. And the goblins were protecting him. Interesting. Albus, McGonagall leaned forward, what exactly is happening here? First the boy disappears from those horrible muggles you insisted on placing him with, then Gringotts freezes his accounts, and now he's apparently in goblin custody under magical disguise. This goes beyond your usual secretiveness. For a moment, Dumbledore seemed to age before her eyes, the weight of his many responsibilities visibly pressing down on him. I made a miscalculation, Minerva, he admitted quietly. The blood wards protecting Harry required certain conditions. Conditions I believed necessary for his safety, despite their unpleasantness. McGonagall's nostrils flared. Unpleasantness? Arabella reported that child was being kept in a cupboard, Albus. A cupboard. An unfortunate situation I intended to address before his Hogwarts attendance, Dumbledore said, though his usual certainty seemed diminished. The greater concern was his magical development. After that night in Godric's Hollow, Harry's core was changed. Volatile. I placed stabilizing restrictions to protect him and others until he was old enough for proper training. Restrictions? McGonagall repeated sharply. What kind of restrictions? Magical suppressors, carefully calibrated to allow gradual growth while preventing dangerous surges. Seeing her expression darken, he added quickly, a medical necessity, Minerva. Then why not inform St. Mungo's? Why not place him with a magical family who could monitor his condition? You know why, Dumbledore said heavily. The remaining Death Eaters, the prophecy, his status in our world. Harry needed anonymity more than comfort. McGonagall's lips pressed into a thin line. And now the goblins have him. How did that happen? I believe they detected the breaking of my suppression spells. Goblin magic is different. More attuned to such disturbances. Dumbledore sighed. They've invoked an ancient magical guardianship claim based on interference with inherent magic, technically valid, though typically applied to goblin children, not wizards. Can you challenge it? Not without risking open conflict with the Goblin Nation. Dumbledore removed his glasses, pinching the bridge of his nose. For now, we monitor. Harry must attend Hogwarts when he turns 11, the magical registry will generate his letter automatically. When he arrives here, we'll have opportunity to reassess the situation. McGonagall studied her longtime friend and colleague, noting the careful phrasing. And what exactly will you reassess, Albus? Dumbledore replaced his glasses, his blue eyes no longer twinkling. Harry Potter carries a burden greater than you know, Minerva. His path was set the moment Voldemort marked him as an equal. My concern is ensuring he follows that path to its necessary conclusion, for all our sakes. As she left the headmaster's office, McGonagall couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that Albus Dumbledore, for all his wisdom and good intentions, had set events in motion that none of them fully understood, and that Harry Potter would pay the price. The months that followed Harry's Diagon Alley excursion brought new intensity to his training. The close call with McGonagall had reinforced the reality that he would eventually have to face the wizarding world and its expectations. Winter passed in the timeless environment of Uruk-hai, where the seasons meant nothing in the torchlit caverns. Harry celebrated his first Christmas away from the Dursleys with a small feast in his chamber shared with Griphook, who found human holiday customs bewildering but was willing to indulge his friend. So you exchange wrapped objects as symbols of, what exactly? Griphook asked, examining the clumsily wrapped package Harry had presented him. Friendship, mostly, Harry explained. Go on, open it. Inside was a wand holster Harry had commissioned from the Goblin crafters, designed to fit Griphook's arm despite goblins being legally prohibited from carrying wands. For your dagger, Harry clarified, seeing Griphook's confusion. But designed like a wizard's holster. Best of both worlds. Griphook's expression shifted to understanding, then appreciation. Practical. And thoughtful. He presented Harry with a small metal orb. My gift lacks wrapping, but not purpose. The orb, Griphook explained, was a goblin training tool, a magical target that adapted to the user's skill level, becoming more difficult to hit as accuracy improved. Perfect for Harry's dagger practice. Such moments of friendship punctuated the rigorous training schedule. By spring, Harry had mastered the basics of goblin combat, could perform most first and second-year Hogwarts spells with his training wand, and had developed his own modified version of the Potter Shield that incorporated goblin metallurgical principles. His education extended beyond magic and combat. Rockfist ensured he understood wizarding economics, politics, and social structures. Harry learned about the Wisengamot's factions, the international magical community, and the complex relationships between magical beings. Knowledge is a weapon sharper than any blade, Rockfist insisted during their lessons. When you return to wizard society, you must be prepared for political battles as well as magical ones. One particular lesson stood out in Harry's memory. Rockfist had presented him with a detailed chart of wizarding Britain's power structures, highlighting the various positions Albus Dumbledore held. Supreme Mugwump, Chief Warlock, Headmaster, unofficial leader of the Light faction, Harry recited, studying the connections. How does one wizard hold so much power? By carefully cultivating an image of benevolent wisdom, Rockfist replied. Dumbledore defeated Grindelwald in 1945, establishing himself as a hero. He then systematically declined ministry positions while accepting roles that gave him influence without direct accountability. And people just let him. Wizards crave figureheads, Rockfist said disdainfully. Strong personalities they can rally behind rather than systems of balanced governance. Dumbledore represents safety, tradition with moderate progress, and moral certainty. A comforting figure in uncertain times. Like after Voldemort's defeat, Harry realized. People were looking for stability. Precisely. Which made it easy for him to make decisions regarding your placement without oversight. Rockfist adjusted his monocle. A consolidation of power goblins would never permit in our society. These lessons in wizard politics proved valuable when, 9 months into Harry's time with the goblins, Ragnarok summoned him to discuss a development in the ongoing legal maneuvering with Dumbledore. He has petitioned the Wizengamot to override our guardianship claim, Ragnarok explained, showing Harry the legal documents. Citing extraordinary circumstances and national security concerns related to your status. Harry scanned the complex legal language. Can he do that? The treaty provisions are clear, Rockfist said from his position beside Ragnarok. Interference with inherent magic establishes our right of intervention. However, Dumbledore wields significant influence in the Wizengamot. Our legal position remains strong, Ragnarok assured him. But this move suggests Dumbledore grows increasingly desperate. His public image suffers each month you remain missing, undermining his carefully constructed persona of infallibility. Good, Harry said firmly. Let him squirm. Ragnarok's sharp-toothed smile appeared. Indeed. However, we must consider accelerating certain aspects of your preparation. If Dumbledore attempts more direct approaches, you should be ready. Direct approaches? The man has a phoenix familiar, Narkic pointed out from his position by the door. A creature capable of bypassing almost any magical barrier. While Gringotts' deepest levels are warded even against such transportation, we cannot discount the possibility of an attempt. This sobering assessment led to the implementation of emergency protocols. Harry learned apparition theory, though he couldn't practice until older, mastered the use of the emergency port keys from his family vault, and began carrying his invisibility cloak at all times. The preparations took on new urgency when, a week later, Harry experienced a vivid nightmare that left his scar burning painfully for the first time since leaving Privet Drive. I saw a forest, he told Nagnok during their morning session, wincing as she examined the inflamed scar. Someone, was drinking blood from a dead unicorn. When it looked up, my scar felt like it was splitting open. Nagnok's expression grew grave. This is concerning. Your scar has always been unusual, resistant to healing magic and containing trace dark energy. I had hoped your unleashed magic would eventually neutralize it. Could it be connected to Voldemort somehow? Harry asked. Ragnarok said he's not truly gone. A possibility we must investigate, Nagnok agreed. The timing is troubling. The dream coincided with reports from Gringotts surface contacts about unusual magical disturbances in Albania, a region long rumored to harbor dark entities. The Goblin seers, consulting their crystal formations deep beneath the bank, reported shadow movements and the stirring of a fragmented power. Voldemort is growing stronger, Ragnarok concluded after reviewing these reports with his council. Perhaps seeking a way to regain physical form. This development added a new dimension to Harry's training. While continuing his regular lessons, he now received specialized instruction in occlumency, the magical art of protecting one's mind from external influence. Your scar may represent a connection to the Dark Lord, Nagnok explained as she taught him the basics of mental shielding. Learning to close that connection could be vital to your safety. Occlumency proved challenging in ways Harry's other magical training hadn't been. It required a different kind of focus, not projecting power outward but turning it inward, creating barriers around his thoughts and memories. Imagine your mind as a vault, Nagnok instructed during their daily sessions. Layer your defenses, false corridors, trapped chambers, hidden compartments for your most precious memories. Harry struggled initially, his naturally expressive magic resisting the tight control occlumency demanded. But gradually, Drawing on Goblin meditation techniques and his growing magical discipline, he developed rudimentary shields that Nagnok tested with gentle mental probes. Adequate for a beginner, she pronounced after a particularly intense session left Harry with a throbbing headache. But far from sufficient against a determined legilimens like Dumbledore or a mental connection to the Dark Lord. "I'm trying," Harry said, frustration evident in his voice. "It's just so different from other magic." "Because it opposes your natural inclinations," Nagnok explained. "Your magic wants to express, to act. Occlumency requires containment, redirection. Think of it as learning to write with your non-dominant hand, possible with practice, but never as instinctive." Despite the difficulties, Harry persisted. The nightmares continued intermittently, though his developing occlumency sometimes allowed him to withdraw from the visions before the worst pain struck. 1 year after his arrival among the goblins, Harry Potter had transformed from a malnourished, magically suppressed child into a competent young wizard with unusual training. His magic had stabilized at a level Nagnok described as exceptionally powerful for his age, with room for significant further growth. His combat skills combined goblin techniques with traditional wizarding dueling, creating an unpredictable hybrid style that even Narkic acknowledged as effective. To mark the anniversary, Ragnarok organized a formal recognition ceremony in the council chamber where Harry had first seen his chained magical core. The 7 council members assembled in their stone seats, with Harry standing before them in formal attire that combined wizarding and goblin styles, black robes accented with goblin metalwork at collar and cuffs. "Harry James Potter," Ragnarok intoned formally, "you have dwelled among the goblin nation for 1 cycle of the sun. You have learned our ways, respected our customs, and proven your value as an ally. The council acknowledges your progress and confirms our continued protection." Each council member presented Harry with a token representing their area of expertise, a crystal from Nagnok for magical growth, a miniature shield from Narkic for combat training, a sealed scroll from Rockfist containing rare historical knowledge. When Harry's turn came to speak, he surprised the assembled goblins by addressing them in carefully practiced gobbledygook. "I stand honored before the council," he said, the harsh syllables difficult but comprehensible. "Your nation gave me truth when others offered lies, freedom when others imposed chains, and knowledge when others enforced ignorance. I will not forget." A murmur of approval rippled through the chamber at his use of their language. Ragnarok's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. The ceremony concluded with the presentation of Harry's progress assessment, a comprehensive evaluation of his magical, physical, and intellectual development. The document, magically certified and sealed with the Gringotts crest, would serve as irrefutable evidence of his treatment under Goblin guardianship should Dumbledore's legal challenges ever reach a formal hearing. That night, a small celebration was held in Harry's honor in one of the larger caverns. Goblin musicians played traditional battle songs on drums and string instruments, while platters of food reflected both Goblin and wizard cuisines. Harry found himself at the center of attention, receiving acknowledging nods from goblins who had previously ignored his presence. "They respect strength and determination," Griphook explained as they sampled roast meats and underground fungi prepared with spices from the surface. "You've proven you possess both." "I couldn't have done it without your help," Harry said sincerely. "All those extra training sessions, teaching me gobbledygook curses Rockfist would never approve of." Griphook's sharp-toothed grin flashed. "The least vulgar of which you used in your speech today. Fortunately, the elders pretended not to notice your creative grammar." Harry laughed, feeling truly at home among these fierce, practical beings who had given him so much. The celebration continued late into the night, with demonstrations of goblin metallurgy, traditional duels, non-lethal, though still impressively violent by human standards, and even a rare performance of ancient magic by the eldest goblins. As the festivities wound down, Ragnarok approached Harry with an unexpected announcement. "The council has approved a second surface excursion," the Goblin King said. "More extensive than your Diagon Alley trip. With proper preparation, we believe it is time for you to visit your parents' resting place in Godric's Hollow." Harry felt a surge of emotion, grief for the parents he'd never known, gratitude for this opportunity to connect with them, and determination to honor their memory. When? He asked simply. 3 days hence. Samhain approaches, what wizards now call Halloween. A time when the veil between worlds thins. An appropriate occasion to honor the fallen. 3 days of intense preparation followed. Harry's magical signature masking was tested and refined. His disguise was enhanced with more permanent glamour charms anchored to a specially crafted amulet. Escape routes were planned, emergency protocols established. On the evening of October 31st, exactly 6 years after Voldemort's attack on his family, Harry stood in the small wizarding cemetery at Godric's Hollow. Griphook and Narkic flanked him in human disguises, while Goblin security teams maintained invisible positions throughout the village. The Potter headstone was simple but elegant white marble, bearing the names James and Lily Potter and the dates of their birth and death. Beneath their names was an inscription, "The last enemy that shall be destroyed is death." Harry stood silently before the grave, a wreath of lilies in his hands. His mother's journals had mentioned these as her favorite flowers, the connection to her name both obvious and meaningful. He placed the wreath carefully at the base of the headstone, then touched the cold marble with trembling fingers. "I'm learning about you," he whispered. "Through your journals, your friends, your magic. I'm becoming someone you'd be proud of, I hope." The night air was crisp with autumn chill, stars visible in the clear sky above. Harry felt a profound connection to this place, to the parents who had sacrificed everything for him, to the life that might have been. "Dumbledore tried to keep me weak," he continued softly. "But I'm growing stronger every day. When I face Voldemort again, and I will, it'll be on my terms, not Dumbledore's. I promise you that." As he spoke the words, a warm breeze seemed to stir the flowers at the grave's base, despite the still night air. For a moment, Harry thought he felt a gentle pressure on his shoulder, as if a hand rested there briefly before withdrawing. "Time to move," Griphook murmured after Harry had spent several minutes in silent communion with his parents' memory. Security reports increased magical activity in the village. They made their way carefully through the cemetery toward their extraction point in a nearby wooded area. As they passed the small church, Harry noticed light spilling from its windows and the sounds of a small gathering inside. "Memorial service," Narkic explained quietly. "This night holds significance in the wizarding world because of your parents' sacrifice and the Dark Lord's defeat." Harry slowed his pace, drawn to the voices from inside. He couldn't make out specific words, but the tone suggested remembrance, respect. "We should not linger," Narkic warned. "Even disguised, this location presents risk." But before they could move on, the church door opened, and a tall figure in midnight blue robes stepped out into the night. Even in the dim light, the long silver beard was unmistakable. Albus Dumbledore had come to Godric's Hollow for the memorial service. "Don't panic," Griphook whispered as they froze in the shadows. "He can't recognize you through these disguises unless he's specifically looking for them." Harry controlled his breathing as Dumbledore paused on the church steps, gazing up at the stars with an unreadable expression. After what seemed an eternity, the old wizard began walking, directly toward the cemetery they had just left. They remained perfectly still as Dumbledore passed within 20 feet of their position, close enough that Harry could see the half-moon spectacles reflecting starlight. The headmaster moved with purpose toward the Potter grave, apparently intending to pay his own respects. Only when Dumbledore was well past them did they resume their careful retreat toward the extraction point. They had nearly reached the tree line when disaster struck. A cat, an ordinary tabby with unusually patterned markings around its eyes, stepped into their path. It stared directly at Harry with an intelligence no normal cat should possess, then deliberately turned its head toward Dumbledore's distant figure. "Animagus," Narkic hissed. "McGonagall." Before they could react, the cat transformed, elongating rapidly into the form of Minerva McGonagall. She didn't draw her wand or call out, she simply stood blocking their path, her stern expression visible even in the dim light. "Mr. Potter," she said quietly. "A word, if you please." Harry's heart pounded against his ribs. Their careful planning hadn't accounted for McGonagall's animagus form patrolling the cemetery. Griphook and Narkic moved protectively closer to Harry, hands near their concealed weapons. "I am not here to interfere with your goblin guardianship," McGonagall continued, addressing the disguised goblins directly. "Nor to alert Albus to your presence. I merely wish to confirm the boy's well-being for my own peace of mind." "Why should we trust you?" Narkic demanded, his glamoured human face maintaining its neutral expression despite the tension in his voice. McGonagall's gaze returned to Harry. "Because Lily and James Potter were not just my students but dear to me personally. Because I objected to Albus leaving their son with those horrible muggles from the very beginning. And because I have serious questions about the protections Albus placed on the boy." Harry made a decision. "It's okay," he told his goblin protectors. "Professor McGonagall taught both my parents. My mother wrote about her in her journals." He stepped forward, though still remaining within the goblin's protective range. "I'm well, Professor. Better than I ever was with the Dursleys." McGonagall studied him intently, seeming to look through the glamour to the boy beneath. "Your mother had your eyes, Mr. Potter. Remarkable eyes. She would be pleased to know you found advocates who recognize your worth." "The goblins have been honest with me," Harry said carefully. "About everything." "I see." McGonagall's expression tightened. "Then you know about Albus's interventions." Harry nodded. "I cannot claim to understand his full reasoning," McGonagall said after a moment. "Albus plays his cards very close to his chest, even with those of us who have worked alongside him for decades. But I can tell you this, he believes absolutely in your importance to the future of our world." "As a weapon," Harry said bitterly. "Or a sacrifice." "Perhaps," McGonagall acknowledged, surprising him with her candor. "But also as a symbol of hope. The wizarding world needs its heroes, Mr. Potter, however unfair that burden may be to place on a child." A sound from the direction of the graves made them all tense. Dumbledore had finished his visit and would be returning their way shortly. "You must go," McGonagall said urgently. "I'll delay Albus." "Why are you helping us?" Griphook asked suspiciously. McGonagall's lips thinned into a determined line. "Because I failed this child once by not opposing Albus more strongly 6 years ago. I won't fail him again by interfering with guardians who are clearly providing better care than those muggles ever did." She turned to Harry once more. "Your Hogwarts letter will come regardless of where you reside, Mr. Potter. When it does, know that not everyone at the school blindly follows Albus Dumbledore's agenda." With that, she transformed back into her tabby cat form and darted toward Dumbledore's approaching figure, deliberately creating a distraction that would draw his attention away from their escape route. They didn't waste the opportunity, quickly making their way to the extraction point where a goblin transport device awaited. Within minutes, they were speeding through the underground tunnels back toward Gringotts, the encounter with McGonagall adding new complexity to Harry's understanding of the challenges ahead. "Can she be trusted?" Harry asked Ragnarok after delivering a full report of the cemetery visit. The Goblin King considered the question carefully. "Minerva McGonagall has a reputation for integrity, even among goblins. Her intervention suggests an independent streak Dumbledore may not fully appreciate. A potential ally, perhaps, though caution remains advisable." "She said my Hogwarts letter will come regardless of where I live," Harry noted. "That matches what you've told me about the magical registry." Ragnarok nodded. "The registry is ancient magic, beyond even Dumbledore's ability to manipulate. When you turn 11, your letter will be generated automatically. At that point, decisions must be made." "I could refuse to attend," Harry suggested, though without conviction. "Possible but inadvisable," Rockfist interjected from his position at Ragnarok's side. "Such a public rejection would force Dumbledore's hand, potentially leading to ministry involvement. Moreover, Hogwarts offers valuable education and connections that would serve your long-term goals." Harry sighed, knowing they were right. His path would eventually lead to Hogwarts and a direct confrontation with Dumbledore. The question wasn't whether that confrontation would come, but how prepared he would be when it did. Then we have just over 3 years before my letter arrives, he said determinedly. 3 years to make sure I'm ready to face whatever Dumbledore has planned. Ragnar's sharp-toothed smile appeared. Indeed, young Potter. And the Goblin Nation will ensure those years are used to maximum advantage. As Harry left the council chamber that night, his thoughts returned to the brief, strange moment at his parents' grave, that warm breeze, the feeling of a hand on his shoulder. Perhaps just imagination or wishful thinking. Or perhaps, on that special night when the veil between worlds thinned, something more. Either way, his resolve had only strengthened. He would continue to grow, to learn, to prepare. For his parents' memory. For his own future. And for the coming conflicts that would define the wizarding world for generations to come. Chapter 3, The Wizard's Return. Harry dodged Griphook's blade and countered with a sweeping kick that the goblin barely avoided. They circled each other in the training arena, breathing hard, weapons glinting in the torchlight. 6 months of intensive combat training had transformed their sparring sessions from basic drills to elaborate duels that drew spectators from throughout Urukai. Getting slow, wizard, Griphook taunted, feinting left before striking right. Harry caught the blade on his goblin-forged dagger, twisting sharply to disarm his opponent. Still quick enough for you. The move almost worked, but Griphook rolled with the momentum, using his lower center of gravity to slip beneath Harry's guard. A flash of steel, and the goblin's training blade rested against Harry's throat. Point, called Narkic from the sidelines. Griphook stepped back, chest heaving but eyes gleaming with satisfaction. That makes us even today. For now, Harry replied with a grin, sheathing his dagger in the wrist holster Griphook had gifted him last Christmas. Their initial antagonism had evolved into a friendship deeper than either would openly acknowledge, a bond forged through shared training, challenges, and mutual respect. Enough combat practice, Narkic announced, approaching the center of the arena. The council summons you both. Harry exchanged a curious glance with Griphook. A joint summons was unusual, especially interrupting scheduled training. Did they say why? Only that it concerns your continued preparation, Narkic replied, leading them toward the great stone staircase that connected the training levels to the council chambers. As they climbed, Harry sensed Griphook's eyes studying him. What? Just noticing the changes, Griphook said. You move differently now. More, deliberate. Harry understood what his friend meant. 18 months among the goblins had transformed him physically and mentally. The scared, malnourished boy from Privet Drive had grown into a lean, confident young wizard with unusual training and unexpected allies. Deliberate is good, Harry said as they reached the council level. Means I'm thinking before I act. Sometimes, Griphook muttered, but his tone carried no real criticism. The massive bronze doors of the council chamber swung open as they approached. Inside, Ragnar and the 6 other council members waited, along with Rockfist, who stood beside what appeared to be a detailed map floating in midair. Potter. Griphook, Ragnar acknowledged them with a nod. We have matters of significance to discuss. Recent developments require adjustments to our timeline. Harry stepped forward, noting the serious expressions on even the usually impassive goblin faces. What's happened? Ragnar gestured to Rockfist, who expanded the floating map to show the British Isles, with glowing points marking specific locations. Magical disturbances, Rockfist explained, adjusting his monocle. Over the past month, our sensors have detected unusual energy patterns at these locations. He pointed to a cluster of glowing dots. All connected to sites of historical significance to one Tom Marvolo riddle. Harry felt a chill run down his spine at the mention of Voldemort's birth name. During his education with the goblins, he'd learned the Dark Wizard's origins, a half-blood born to a witch mother and muggle father, who had reinvented himself as the heir of Slytherin. You think he's making moves? Harry asked, studying the map more carefully. The dots formed no obvious pattern to his eye. Not directly, said Nagnok, rising from her seat to join Rockfist at the map. Our seers believe these disturbances reflect magical artifacts responding to a strengthening presence. Objects connected to Riddle's essence reacting to his increasing power, wherever he currently exists. Like my scar, Harry said quietly, one hand unconsciously rising to the lightning bolt mark that had occasionally burned during his time underground. Nagnok nodded grimly. Precisely. Your connection has grown more active as well, has it not? The nightmares, the phantom pains. Harry couldn't deny it. Despite his improving acclimacy, the connection sometimes broke through, especially during sleep. They've been more frequent lately. More vivid. This accelerates our timeline, Ragnarok declared. Your preparation remains incomplete, but circumstances demand adaptation. The Council has decided, you must establish your position in the wizarding world before these disturbances attract wider attention. Meaning what, exactly? Harry asked, though he sensed where this was heading. 3 key actions, Ragnarok held up a long-fingered hand, ticking off points. First, you must secure a proper wand, your magical training has reached its limit with practice instruments. Second, you must formally sever ties with your Muggle relatives to prevent Dumbledore using them as leverage. And third, his yellow eyes fixed on Harry intently, you must publicly declare your status under Goblin protection before Dumbledore can manufacture a crisis to reclaim you. Harry took a deep breath, absorbing the magnitude of what Ragnarok proposed. This meant ending his relative seclusion, stepping back into the wizarding world that had such expectations of him. Part of him wanted to protest, to argue for more time, but he knew the goblins weren't given to hasty decisions. When? He asked simply. The wand first, tomorrow, Ragnarok replied. Our intelligence indicates Ollivander will be receiving a shipment of rare cores that may better match your unusual magical signature. Griphook shifted beside Harry. And what role do I play in this? Why was I summoned? Ragnarok's expression softened slightly, an almost imperceptible change that only those who knew him well would notice. You have become Potter's closest associate among our kind. The Council recognizes this bond as potentially valuable. You will accompany him on these missions, both as protector and witness. If Griphook was surprised by this announcement, he hid it well, merely inclining his head in acknowledgement. I am honored by the Council's trust. There is one more matter, Ragnarok continued, his gaze returning to Harry. Given the acceleration of our plans, the Council believes it prudent to secure your legal status through magical means beyond simple documentation. Harry frowned slightly. What kind of magical means? Rockfist stepped forward. A blood-bonded oath of protection and allegiance, ancient magic that would formalize your relationship with the Goblin Nation in ways even Dumbledore cannot challenge. Blood magic? Harry asked hesitantly, remembering what he'd learned about such practices in his studies. Isn't that considered dark by the Ministry? By narrow-minded wizards who fear what they do not understand, Rockfist sniffed dismissively. Blood magic predates the Ministry by millennia. It is neither dark nor light, merely powerful and binding. Nagnok raised a hand to clarify. The ritual we propose is recognized under the Treaty of 1612 as legitimate Goblin cultural practice. Even the Ministry acknowledges its validity, however reluctantly. Harry considered this carefully. The Goblins had earned his trust over the past 18 months, but blood magic represented a significant commitment, one that would affect his future in ways he couldn't fully predict. What exactly would this oath entail, he asked. Protection and allegiance, as Rockfist stated, Ragnarok replied. The Goblin Nation would formally recognize you as a friend and ally, entitled to our protection and resources. In return, you would acknowledge our aid and pledge to advocate for fair treatment of Goblinkind when you eventually assume your positions in wizarding society. It's not servitude, Nagnok added, correctly reading Harry's concern. Nor does it place you under our command. It simply formalizes what has already developed naturally, a mutually beneficial alliance. Harry glanced at Griphook, seeking his friend's reaction. The young goblin gave an almost imperceptible nod. "I'll consider it," Harry said finally. "After we handle the more immediate concerns." "Fair enough," Ragnarok agreed. "Prepare yourselves for tomorrow's excursion. Ollivander's shop opens at sunrise, we will arrive before the crowds." As they left the council chamber, Harry felt a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. After months of preparation and training underground, he was about to take concrete steps back into the wizarding world. The confrontation with Dumbledore, inevitable since the night the goblins had freed his magic, was drawing closer. Having second thoughts? Griphook asked as they descended toward their quarters. Harry shook his head. Not about facing Dumbledore or the wizarding world. Just thinking about how everything's accelerating. The timing was always beyond our control, Griphook pointed out pragmatically. Better to act on our terms than react to Riddle's movements. Harry nodded, appreciating his friend's straightforward assessment. "What do you think about this blood oath they proposed?" Griphook was silent for several steps before answering. "Such oaths are rare, especially with wizards. The council must value your alliance highly to suggest it." "That's not what I asked." Griphook's mouth twitched in what Harry recognized as the goblin equivalent of a rueful smile. "Always direct." "Very well. I think it would serve you well. Formal recognition by the goblin nation would give you standing even purebloods would hesitate to challenge. And..." He hesitated briefly, "it would make official what is already truth in practice." Harry raised an eyebrow. "Which is?" "That some alliances transcend the usual boundaries between magical beings," Griphook said simply. "Now, shall we prepare for tomorrow, or waste more time on sentiment?" Harry grinned at his friend's characteristic deflection. "Prepare. Definitely prepare." The pre-dawn light had barely begun to illuminate Diagon Alley when a Gringotts cart emerged from a concealed entrance behind the bank. Unlike the ordinary carts that transported wizards to their vaults, this one was heavily shielded with goblin magic and carried an unusual group, 2 goblin guards in formal bank attire, a third goblin whose elaborate armor marked him as higher ranked, and a human boy whose features seemed to shift subtly in the half-light. "Disillusionment holding?" Griphook asked quietly as they approached Ollivander's wand shop. Harry nodded, feeling the magic of the goblin-crafted amulet around his neck that maintained his disguise: sandy hair instead of black, brown eyes instead of green, slightly altered facial structure, and most importantly, no visible scar. "Signature suppression stable," he confirmed, having checked his magical masking before leaving Gringotts. After months of practice, he could maintain the suppression almost effortlessly, though it still limited his ability to perform complex magic while disguised. They reached the ancient wand shop just as Ollivander himself was unlocking the door. The elderly wandmaker showed no surprise at finding goblins and a young wizard waiting for him, indeed, his silvery eyes suggested he had been expecting them. "Ah, Gringotts representatives," he said mildly. "And a young client in need of a wand, I presume? Please, enter." The interior of Ollivander's shop was exactly as Harry's mother had described in her journals, narrow and shabby, with thousands of thin boxes piled high on shelves reaching to the ceiling. The air tingled with magical energy from countless wands awaiting their matches. "Unusual to see goblins escorting a young wizard," Ollivander remarked as he closed the door behind them. "Most interesting." "Our client's privacy is paramount," stated the lead goblin guard. "We have an arrangement with your establishment regarding discretion." Of course," Ollivander nodded, his unblinking gaze fixed on Harry. "All my customers receive absolute confidentiality." "Now then, young man, which is your wand arm?" "I'm right-handed," Harry replied, using the slightly deeper voice the disguise enchantments provided. Ollivander produced a tape measure that began measuring Harry of its own accord, arm length, wrist to elbow, shoulder to floor, knee to armpit, and around his head. As it worked, Ollivander studied Harry with unsettling intensity. "Every Ollivander wand has a core of powerful magical substance," the wandmaker explained. We primarily use unicorn hairs, dragon heartstrings, and phoenix feathers. No two Ollivander wands are the same, just as no two unicorns, dragons, or phoenixes are the same. And of course, you will never get such good results with another wizard's wand. The tape measure finished and collapsed to the floor. Ollivander disappeared among the shelves, returning with several boxes. Let us begin. Maple and unicorn hair. 9 inches. Quite whippy. Try. Harry took the wand but had barely raised it when Ollivander snatched it back. No, no. Cherry and dragon heartstring. 10 inches. Quite rigid. Again, the wand was taken before Harry could properly test it. This pattern continued through half a dozen wands, with Ollivander becoming increasingly excited rather than frustrated. Tricky customer, eh? Not to worry, we'll find your perfect match. I wonder. He disappeared into the back of the shop, returning with a dust-covered box that looked older than the others. An unusual combination, holly and phoenix feather, 11 inches, nice and supple. Go on, try it. The moment Harry's fingers closed around the wand, he felt a sudden warmth. He raised it above his head and brought it swishing down, producing a stream of red and gold sparks. The goblin guards tensed, but Ollivander clapped his hands. Oh, bravo! Yes, indeed, very good. Well, 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 how curious, how very curious. Harry lowered the wand, suddenly wary. What's curious? Ollivander fixed Harry with his pale stare. I remember every wand I've ever sold, young man. Every single wand. It so happens that the phoenix whose tail feather is in your wand gave another feather, just one other. It is most curious that you should be destined for this wand when its brother, well, its brother gave someone a very famous scar. Harry felt his blood run cold. The wand connected to Voldemort? He glanced at Griphook, who had gone very still. The Dark Lord's wand? Harry asked quietly. We do not speak his name, Ollivander whispered. But yes. 13.5 inches. You. Powerful wand, very powerful, and in the wrong hands. But how curious you should be paired with its brother when your magical signature feels so familiar. The wand maker's eyes narrowed slightly, studying Harry more intently. Almost as if. The transaction is complete? Griphook interrupted sharply. Ollivander blinked, the moment broken. Yes, yes. 7 galleons for the wand. As one of the guards counted out the gold, Ollivander continued to watch Harry with undisguised curiosity. I think we must expect great things from you, young man. After all, he who must not be named did great things, terrible, yes, but great. They left the shop quickly after that, Harry's new wand secure in an arm holster beneath his sleeve. The moment they were a safe distance away, Griphook spoke in urgent gobbledygook to the guards, who immediately tightened formation around them. Ollivander suspects, Griphook said quietly as they hurried back toward Gringotts. He nearly saw through your disguise. The wand recognized me, Harry realized. The brother to Voldemort's, it knew who I really am. Magic recognizes magic, Griphook agreed grimly. Especially connections as profound as the one between you and the Dark Lord. We must report this development to Ragnarok immediately. Back within Gringotts' protective walls, Harry examined his new wand more carefully. Despite its ominous connection to Voldemort, it felt right in his hand, an extension of his will in a way the training wands never had. When he performed a simple Lumos, the light blazed brighter than any he'd previously produced, forcing him to quickly end the spell before it attracted attention. Your power has grown beyond our measurements, Nagnok observed after conducting tests on Harry with his new wand. This Phoenix Feather Core amplifies your natural abilities significantly. Is that good or bad? Harry asked, still troubled by Ollivander's revelations. Power itself is neutral, Nagnok replied. Its application determines its nature. More concerning is the core's connection to the Dark Lord's wand. Such magical parallels are rarely coincidental. Ragnarok was equally troubled when they reported Ollivander's near recognition. The wand maker has unusual perception. If he suspects your identity, others with similar gifts might as well. Does this change our plans? Harry asked. Ragnarok considered for a moment before shaking his head. No. It accelerates them. We must secure your position before rumors spread. The confrontation with your Muggle relatives must happen tomorrow. So soon? Harry hadn't expected this timeline. I thought we'd have more time to prepare. Events are moving quickly, Ragnarok said firmly. Ollivander will keep your confidence, but he will also watch for signs of Harry Potter's return. We must establish your legal standing before speculation begins. That evening, Harry spent hours practicing with his new wand, marveling at how it enhanced even simple spells. The holly and phoenix feather seemed to anticipate his intentions, responding to the subtlest direction of his magic. Spells that had required concentration with the training wands now flowed effortlessly. It's like I've been trying to run underwater before, he told Griphook as they prepared their equipment for the next day's mission. Everything's clearer, faster. Griphook nodded, examining his own weapons, a short sword and several throwing knives, all goblin forged. A proper tool makes any task easier. That's why this confrontation with your Muggle relatives is necessary. You need proper standing in the wizard world, not just proper equipment. Harry checked his wand holster, ensuring the release mechanism worked smoothly. I've thought about what I'll say to them. The Dursleys, I mean. Will you seek vengeance? Griphook asked, his tone neutral rather than judgmental. Goblin culture understood the concept of balanced retribution. Harry considered the question seriously. Not vengeance. Justice, maybe. Acknowledgement of what they did. But mostly, I want to look them in the eye as myself, not as the frightened kid they locked in a cupboard. He glanced at his friend. Does that make sense? Perfect sense, Griphook replied. In Goblin tradition, facing one's former oppressors as an equal is the greatest victory. They spent the remainder of the evening reviewing the legal documents prepared by Gringotts' Magical Contracts Department. The paperwork formally severed Harry's connection to the Dursleys, transferring any remaining guardian authority to the Goblin Nation through the ancient rite of magical intervention. Everything was in order, requiring only signatures, willingly given or magically compelled, to become binding. That night, as Harry lay in bed, his thoughts turned to the confrontation ahead. Not just with the Dursleys, but the inevitable face-off with Dumbledore that would follow. After 18 months of preparation, he was about to step out of the shadows and formally declare his independence from the man who had suppressed his magic and abandoned him to abuse. His new wand lay beside his pillow, a tangible symbol of his growing power and the connection to Voldemort he couldn't escape. The Brother Wand. The matching core. Another link in the chain binding him to a conflict he hadn't chosen but couldn't avoid. I'm ready, he whispered to himself, and was surprised to find he meant it. Number 4, Privet Drive looked smaller than Harry remembered. The neat lawn, the gleaming windows, the polished car in the driveway, all designed to project normality while concealing the cruelty within. He stood across the street, Griphook and Narkik beside him under disillusionment charms, studying the house that had never been a home. Blood wards completely collapsed, Narkik confirmed, consulting a goblin detection device. No magical protections remain. Harry nodded, not surprised. Dumbledore's wards had been anchored in his blood connection to Petunia and his regular presence in the house. After 18 months away, that magic had dissipated entirely. Remember the plan, Griphook said quietly. We secure the perimeter. You make initial contact. Legal team follows once entry is established. I remember, Harry said, straightening his shoulders. He wore no disguise today, no glamour charms, no signature suppression. For the first time since the goblins had found him, he walked openly as Harry Potter, his lightning scar visible above eyes that matched his mother's. Crossing the street felt like crossing a threshold between two lives, his past as the Dursleys' unwanted burden and his future as a wizard coming into his power. He rang the doorbell, the sound echoing with finality. Heavy footsteps approached. The door swung open to reveal Vernon Dursley, as corpulent and mustached as ever, his face already reddening at the interruption to his Sunday morning. "Whatever you're selling, we don't want," Vernon began, then froze as recognition dawned. His small eyes bulged, his mustache twitched, and his complexion shifted rapidly from red to white to purple. "You." "Hello, Uncle Vernon," Harry said calmly. "May I come in? We have matters to discuss." Vernon sputtered incoherently, backing away from the door, not in invitation but in shock. Harry stepped inside anyway, noting how the familiar hallway seemed to have shrunk. The door to his old cupboard stood half open, revealing that it now stored cleaning supplies. "Who is it, Vernon?" Petunia's voice called from the kitchen, followed by the sound of approaching footsteps. She appeared in the hallway, dish towel in hand, and stopped dead at the sight of Harry. "Oh my God! Aunt Petunia," Harry acknowledged with a nod. "Is Dudley home as well? This concerns all of you. How dare you?" Vernon found his voice at last, advancing on Harry with fists clenched. "Disappearing for over a year, causing all sorts of trouble with those freaks asking questions, and now you just walk in here like you own the place." Harry didn't retreat. Instead, he met Vernon's gaze steadily. "Those freaks were looking for me because the man who left me on your doorstep, the man who expected you to raise me, never bothered to check on my welfare. Not once in 6 years." Vernon faltered slightly at Harry's calm demeanor. This wasn't the frightened boy he remembered. "Where have you been?" Petunia demanded, her voice higher than usual. "The police came. That bearded man came. They thought we'd done something to you. Haven't you?" Harry asked quietly. 6 years in a cupboard. Dudley's cast-offs. Punishments for things I couldn't control. We took you in." Vernon bellowed, finding safer ground in righteous indignation. "Fed you. Clothed you. And this is the thanks we get?" "I'm not here for a debate on your parenting skills," Harry said, his voice hardening slightly. "I'm here to formally sever our relationship, legally and magically." At the word magically, both Dursleys flinched. Petunia's eyes darted to the windows, checking if neighbors might be watching. "I've brought legal representatives to handle the paperwork," Harry continued, gesturing toward the still open front door. On cue, 2 Goblin legal representatives materialized on the doorstep, no longer disillusioned. Their appearance, short, sharp-featured, dressed in formal suits tailored to their proportions, elicited a shriek from Petunia and a strangled gasp from Vernon. "Mr. and Mrs. Dursley," the lead Goblin said formally, "we represent the magical guardianship interests of Harry James Potter. We require your signatures on documentation relinquishing all claims to guardianship, custody, or authority over said minor. Gee, get those things out of my house." Vernon stammered, face purpling again. "I won't have it. I won't." Harry sighed. "This can happen 2 ways, Uncle Vernon. You can sign the papers willingly, and we'll be gone within minutes. Or you can refuse, and we'll obtain magical verification of your unfitness as guardians. That process is significantly more intrusive and time-consuming." Petunia, always more perceptive than her husband about magical matters, caught the implied threat. "What exactly would that entail?" she asked tightly. "Magical examination of this household," the Goblin legal representative explained clinically. "Extraction and preservation of memories regarding the child's treatment. Verification of living conditions." He gestured toward the cupboard. "All admissible in both magical and muggle courts." The color drained from Petunia's face. She placed a restraining hand on Vernon's arm as he opened his mouth to protest further. "Vernon," she said quietly. "Let's just sign. We never wanted the boy anyway." Listen to your wife, Mr. Dursley, the Goblin advised. This outcome benefits all parties. You'll have no further obligation to or contact with Mr. Potter. The magical world will have no further reason to intrude upon your normal life. Vernon's internal struggle played out visibly on his face, rage warring with self-preservation. Finally, self-interest won. Fine. Where do I sign? The sooner this freakishness is out of my house, the better. They moved to the living room, where the Goblin spread the documents across the coffee table. Harry noticed that Dudley was evidently not home, probably out terrorizing neighborhood children with his gang. As Vernon scanned the papers with deep suspicion, Harry took in the living room with its numerous photos of Dudley but none of him. The normal family the Dursleys had so desperately pretended to be, denying their nephew's existence whenever possible. This all looks like gibberish, Vernon complained, pointing to sections of the document that shifted between normal legal terminology and magical clauses invisible to Muggles. The magical sections don't concern you, the Goblin assured him. They pertain to the transfer of magical guardianship, which you, as non-magical persons, cannot hold anyway. Vernon grudgingly signed where indicated, followed by Petunia, whose hand trembled slightly. As the quill, an ordinary one, not the blood quills used for more serious magical contracts, scratched across the parchment, Harry felt a subtle shift in the air, as if some lingering connection had finally severed. The blood wards, he murmured to Grip Hook, who had remained disillusioned nearby. Yes, came the Goblin's quiet reply. The final threads dissipating with their formal rejection of guardianship. The legal representatives gathered the signed documents, producing copies that reorganized themselves to show only the Muggle-relevant sections to the Dursleys. Transaction complete, the lead Goblin announced. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley, you are hereby released from all obligations toward Harry James Potter. Likewise, all claims to authority, property, or decision-making regarding said minor are permanently severed. Good riddance, Vernon muttered, then fixed Harry with a glare. So that's it? You disappear again and we never have to deal with your freakishness? Something in Harry, perhaps the last remnant of the abused child he'd been, wanted to lash out, to show Vernon exactly what kind of freakishness he was capable of now. But he controlled the impulse, recognizing it as beneath him. That's it, he confirmed. I won't be back. But before I go, he produced the holly wand from his sleeve, causing both Dursleys to recoil. I need to collect something. No magic in this house. Vernon shouted, panic overriding his momentary relief. I forbid it. Harry ignored him, pointing his wand at the cupboard under the stairs. Accio Harry's possessions. There was a momentary silence, then a small, thumping sound from within the cupboard. The door creaked open further, and a tiny toy soldier, one of Dudley's discards that Harry had hidden beneath the thin mattress, flew across the room into his waiting hand. The Dursleys stared in horror at this casual display of magic in their living room. But Harry was looking at the small plastic figure with a mixture of sadness and resolution. This worthless cast-off had been his only toy, his imaginary companion during lonely nights locked in darkness. That's it, he said softly. That's all I ever truly owned here. Petunia made an odd sound, not quite a gasp, not quite a word. For a moment, something like shame flickered across her pinched features as she looked from the toy soldier to her sister's son. Lily would have, she began, then stopped herself, lips pressing into a thin line. Would have what? Harry asked, suddenly intent. Would have hated how you treated her son. Would have been ashamed of her own sister. Would have used her magic to turn you both into the rats you are. Petunia flinched at each suggestion, but shook her head. Would have understood why we couldn't, why I couldn't. She faltered again, unable or unwilling to finish. I don't need your excuses, Harry said, pocketing the toy soldier and turning toward the door. Or your apologies. I just needed to look you in the eye one last time and let you see that your cruelty didn't break me. That I am my parents' son, despite everything you did to stamp the magic out of me. He walked to the door, the Goblin legal team following silently. On the threshold, he paused, looking back at the Dursleys, Vernon still purple-faced with suppressed rage, Petunia white-lipped and trembling. "Goodbye," Harry said simply. "I hope, for your sake, we never meet again." As they left Privet Drive, Harry felt a weight lift from his shoulders, not just emotionally but magically. Narcic confirmed it with his detection device. "The last vestiges of Dumbledore's blood magic," the Goblin warrior explained. "Completely dissolved with the formal separation." "Will Dumbledore know?" Harry asked as they walked toward the Goblin transport hidden in a wooded area 2 streets away. "Undoubtedly," Narcic replied. "He likely still has monitoring charms keyed to those wards. Their complete failure will trigger alerts." "Good," Harry said firmly. "I'm done hiding." Before they could reach their extraction point, a series of loud cracks split the quiet Sunday morning air. 4 wizards in ministry robes appeared on the street ahead of them, wands drawn but not yet pointed directly at Harry's group. "Department of Magical Law Enforcement," announced the lead wizard, a tall man with a weathered face. "We've detected unauthorized magic in a Muggle area. Identify yourselves." The Goblin legal representative stepped forward. "Gringotts official business," the leader stated, producing a gold-sealed document. "Authorized under Treaty Section 12, Paragraph 7, Magical Contract Execution in Non-Magical Environments." The Auror examined the document with narrowed eyes. "This seems in order, but it doesn't explain the presence of an underage wizard performing magic in a Muggle neighborhood." "I'm under Goblin magical guardianship," Harry stated clearly. "My magic is authorized under their supervision." The Auror's gaze shifted to Harry, recognition dawning as he noted the distinctive scar. "Merlin's beard. Harry Potter." Before Harry could respond, another crack announced a new arrival. Albus Dumbledore appeared beside the Ministry wizards, resplendent in midnight blue robes spangled with silver stars. His long white beard shone in the morning sunlight, but his normally twinkling blue eyes were sharp and serious behind his half-moon spectacles. "Harry," he said softly, as if speaking to a skittish animal. "At last." Harry felt Griphook and Narcic tense beside him, ready for conflict. But he remained calm, meeting Dumbledore's gaze steadily. "Headmaster Dumbledore," he acknowledged formally. "Your timing is excellent. I've just officially terminated my relationship with the Dursleys, as you can see." He gestured to the Goblin legal representatives and their documentation. Dumbledore's expression showed momentary surprise before settling into grandfatherly concern. "My dear boy, such legal matters are complex. Surely this could have been handled more appropriately, after discussion. Like the appropriate discussions you had before placing suppression spells on my magic." Harry countered, his voice remaining level despite the anger churning inside. "Or before abandoning me to people who locked me in a cupboard for 6 years. The Aurors exchanged uncomfortable glances. This was clearly not the reunion they had expected to witness. Dumbledore sighed heavily. "Harry, there is much you don't understand." "Actually," Harry interrupted, "I understand quite well. The Goblins have been very thorough in my education, magical, historical, and political." "The Goblins," Dumbledore repeated, his gaze shifting to Harry's companions. "Yes, I suspected their involvement when the Potter accounts were frozen. Most irregular." "Actually, Headmaster, it was entirely regular," corrected the Goblin legal representative. "Mr. Potter is under our protection through the right of magical intervention after discovery of unauthorized suppression magic affecting his core development." One of the Aurors frowned. "Suppression magic? On a child? That's highly restricted, Albus." "A medical necessity," Dumbledore explained smoothly. Harry's magical core was destabilized by the events of that Halloween night. "The measures were protective, temporary. 38 years is hardly temporary," Harry cut in. "And the Goblins found no evidence of instability once the suppression was removed. Only natural power that you attempted to chain." A crowd was beginning to gather, Muggle neighbors drawn by the unusual gathering on their quiet street. Dumbledore noted this with a slight frown. "This is hardly the place for such a discussion," he said. "Harry, we should continue this conversation somewhere more appropriate. Perhaps at Hogwarts, where, no." Harry's refusal was calm but firm. "I'm not going anywhere with you, Headmaster. I am legally under Goblin protection until I reach magical maturity or choose another path. The paperwork has already been filed with the Department of Magical Law Enforcement." The lead Auror nodded reluctantly. "He's right, Albus. I saw the filing come through last week. Unusual, but technically valid under the 1803 treaty." Dumbledore's serene mask slipped slightly, revealing a flash of frustration. "Harry, you cannot comprehend the forces at play. Your safety, the safety of our entire world, requires certain protections that only I can provide." "Like the blood wards that just collapsed completely?" Harry asked. "The ones anchored in a home where I was never loved, never wanted? Those protections?" "The wards were necessary," Dumbledore insisted. "Your mother's sacrifice created powerful magic that protected you from Voldemort and his followers. By living with her blood relatives, I survived despite the Dursleys, not because of them," Harry said firmly. "And I'll continue to survive under Goblin protection, with my magic free and my mind clear." Dumbledore studied Harry intently, and Harry felt a subtle pressure against his mental shields, the occlumency barriers Nagnok had helped him build. He reinforced them instinctively, watching Dumbledore's eyes widen slightly in surprise. "You've been taught occlumency," the old wizard observed. "Remarkable for one so young." "Among other things," Harry replied, maintaining his shields. "Things you never intended me to learn, I suspect." The growing tension was interrupted by another loud crack. A witch in emerald green robes appeared beside the Aurors, Minerva McGonagall, her face set in lines of stern disapproval as she took in the scene. "Albus," she said sharply. "What is the meaning of this public confrontation? There are Muggles watching." Indeed, the crowd of neighbors had grown, many pointing and whispering about the oddly dressed strangers on their street. The Aurors had noticed too and were beginning to look concerned about the statute of secrecy implications. "Professor McGonagall," Harry greeted her with genuine respect. "We meet again, under slightly different circumstances." McGonagall's expression softened marginally as she regarded Harry. "Mr. Potter. You appear to be in good health, which is more than I can say for the situation I've walked into." "A situation that requires immediate containment," the lead Auror interjected. "We need to move this discussion and deal with these Muggles before the statute is completely shredded." Dumbledore nodded, seizing the opportunity. "Quite right. Harry, we must continue this elsewhere." "The Auror office, perhaps, or, Gringotts," Harry countered firmly. "Neutral ground, where both Goblin and Wizard law apply equally." Dumbledore hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with that suggestion. Gringotts represented one of the few places where his authority held less sway. McGonagall broke the impasse. "A reasonable compromise. Gringotts it is." She fixed Dumbledore with a pointed look. "Unless you object, Albus." Put on the spot, Dumbledore inclined his head in reluctant agreement. "Very well. Gringotts. But first, these Muggles." As the Aurors began the process of obliviating the onlookers, Harry and his Goblin companions prepared for departure. Griphook, still disillusioned to all but Harry, spoke quietly in his ear. "He will try to manipulate the situation at Gringotts. Be prepared." "I am," Harry assured his friend. "We've been preparing for 18 months. The journey to Gringotts took place via Ministry transportation, a portkey that deposited them in a designated arrival area near the bank steps. Throughout the journey, Dumbledore maintained a careful distance from Harry, as if recognizing that pushing too hard too quickly would be counterproductive. Inside Gringotts' vast marble hall, the Goblin tellers barely glanced up as the unusual procession entered, Harry flanked by his goblin representatives, followed by Dumbledore, McGonagall, and two of the Aurors who had insisted on accompanying them. "This way," directed one of Harry's legal representatives, leading them not to a public meeting room but through a hidden door into the administrative levels of the bank. Here, the architecture shifted from wizard-friendly opulence to goblin practicality, lower ceilings, angular doorways, and surfaces decorated with geometric patterns rather than ornate carvings. They entered a formal conference chamber where Ragnarok himself waited, seated at the head of a stone table. The Goblin King wore his most impressive regalia, gold armor inlaid with rubies, the ceremonial crown of the Goblin Nation, and multiple magical artifacts that subtly radiated power. "Albus Dumbledore," Ragnarok acknowledged coolly. "We meet at last, after many exchanges of parchment." "Director Ragnarok," Dumbledore replied with a slight bow. "Indeed, our correspondence has been extensive of late." "Be seated," Ragnarok directed. "This matter requires formal resolution." As they took their places around the table, Harry noted the careful positioning. Ragnarok at the head, Harry and his goblin representatives to his right, Dumbledore and the wizards to his left. A physical manifestation of the divide between them. "We are here," Ragnarok began without preamble, "to address the status of Harry James Potter, magical ward of the Goblin Nation through right of intervention, and heir to the ancient and noble house of Potter. Headmaster Dumbledore has raised objections to this arrangement. Today, we settle the matter." Dumbledore leaned forward slightly. "Director Ragnarok, no one disputes the Goblin Nation's right to intervene in cases of magical interference. However, the circumstances surrounding Harry's case are exceptional. The protections I placed were medically necessary and intended for his safety." Curious that no medical documentation exists to support this claim, Ragnarok countered smoothly. "No healer certification, no St. Mungo's consultation, no second opinion from magical experts. The situation required immediate action and absolute secrecy," Dumbledore explained. Voldemort's followers were still at large, seeking the boy who had defeated their master. Documentation would have created a trail that might have led them to him. Harry listened to this exchange with growing impatience. "Headmaster," he finally interrupted, "let's be direct. You suppressed my magic without consent, left me with abusive relatives without monitoring my welfare, and have been using my family's Wisengamot seat and political accounts without authorization. The question isn't whether you had reasons, it's whether you had the right." McGonagall's eyebrows rose at this succinct summary. One of the Aurors shifted uncomfortably. Dumbledore sighed heavily. "Harry, every action I took was with your best interests at heart. The magical world has expectations of you that would have been a terrible burden for a child to bear. I sought to give you as normal a childhood as possible while ensuring you were protected from those who would harm you." "A cupboard, Albus?" McGonagall asked quietly. "Was that part of your normal childhood plan?" A flicker of genuine discomfort crossed Dumbledore's face. "I did not anticipate the extent of the Dursleys' resentment. A regrettable oversight I had planned to address before Harry's Hogwarts attendance." 7 years later, Harry noted dryly. "Very prompt." Ragnarok tapped a long finger on the stone table. "The past cannot be undone. We are here to determine the path forward. Mr. Potter has formally severed ties with his Muggle relatives, with their willing signatures. He remains under Goblin protection through a legally filed claim. What specifically does Headmaster Dumbledore propose as an alternative?" Dumbledore straightened, his blue eyes regaining their customary twinkle as he moved to his prepared position. "I propose a compromise. Harry must attend Hogwarts when he turns 11, this is non-negotiable, as his name has been in the magical registry since birth. However, during school breaks, he could divide his time between appropriate wizarding guardians and continued goblin education, if he finds it valuable." "And who would these appropriate wizarding guardians be?" Harry asked, already suspecting the answer. "There are several suitable candidates," Dumbledore replied vaguely. "Magical families who would welcome you and provide proper guidance. The Weasleys, perhaps, who have a son your age, or, families loyal to you, Harry finished. Who would report to you, defer to your judgment, and ensure I remained under your influence. Dumbledore's smile tightened slightly. Harry, this suspicion is unwarranted. I have only ever acted in your best interest. From your perspective, Harry countered. Not from mine. And not from the Goblin's perspective either, after they examined the magical suppression you placed on me. One of the Aurors, who had been listening with increasing concern, finally spoke up. Headmaster Dumbledore, as a representative of the DMLE, I must ask, what exactly was the nature of these suppression spells? Such magic is strictly regulated when applied to minors. Before Dumbledore could answer, Ragnarok produced a crystal sphere from within his robes. He placed it on the table, where it began projecting an image into the air above, the same visualization of Harry's magical core that he had seen in the Revealer on his first night with the goblins, complete with the golden chains wrapped around his power. This was Mr. Potter's magical core when we discovered him, Ragnarok explained clinically. The binding spell signature matches Albus Dumbledore's magical imprint exactly. Our analysis indicated these suppressors would have limited his magical growth for approximately 38 years, well into adulthood. The Aurors looked genuinely shocked. Even McGonagall, who had clearly suspected something of the sort, appeared disturbed by the visual evidence. 38 years, one Auror repeated incredulously. That goes well beyond any medical justification, Albus. That's functional crippling of a magical core. Dumbledore's expression remained composed, though a slight tightness around his eyes betrayed his discomfort at having this evidence presented so publicly. The duration was calibrated based on the unique circumstances of Harry's condition. His core absorbed a portion of Voldemort's power that night in Godric's Hollow, power that could have corrupted or overwhelmed him without proper containment. Yet when we removed the suppression, Ragnarok continued, the sphere now showing Harry's core glowing free and bright, we found no corruption, no instability, merely unusual strength. Mr. Potter has since demonstrated exceptional control and magical health under our guidance. The implications hung heavy in the air. Even if Dumbledore's initial intentions had been protective, the extent and duration of the suppression suggested ulterior motives. Harry decided it was time to take control of the conversation. I don't dispute that I'll attend Hogwarts, he said clearly. I look forward to it. But I will do so as a ward of the Goblin Nation, not as your ward, headmaster. My legal guardianship remains with them until I reach magical maturity. Dumbledore studied Harry with new intensity, as if truly seeing him for the first time, not as the malleable child he had expected to find, but as a young wizard with unexpected agency and allies. The magical world has certain expectations of the boy who lived, he said carefully. Your unique position in our society is precisely why I need guardians who won't use me as a political symbol or a weapon, Harry finished firmly. The goblins have no stake in wizard politics beyond fair treatment of magical beings. They've educated me about my heritage, trained my magic without restraint, and prepared me to face whatever challenges come, including Voldemort's eventual return. Dumbledore's eyes widened slightly at this last statement. You know about the prophecy? Harry asked. Not its exact wording, no. But I know of its existence. The goblins have their own seers, their own sources of information. They've hidden nothing from me, unlike others. His green eyes bored into Dumbledore's blue ones. A tense silence fell across the table. McGonagall looked between Dumbledore and Harry with growing comprehension, while the Aurors shifted uncomfortably at the mention of prophecies and the Dark Lord's return. Finally, Dumbledore seemed to reach a decision. Very well, he said quietly. I see that my miscalculations have led us to an impasse. If Harry wishes to remain under Goblin guardianship while attending Hogwarts, I will not contest it further, provided certain conditions are met. What conditions? Harry asked warily. First, you must reside at Hogwarts during term time like any other student, subject to school rules and authority. Second, your summer residence must include appropriate magical protections, given the unique threats you may face. And third, Dumbledore's eyes took on a steely quality despite his gentle tone, you must agree to additional training with me personally regarding matters that transcend standard magical education. Harry glanced at Ragnarok, who gave a nearly imperceptible nod. They had anticipated something like this. I agree to the first condition unconditionally, Harry replied carefully. Regarding the second, the goblin protections on my residence exceed anything the ministry could provide, so that's already satisfied. As for the third. He paused, choosing his words deliberately. I will accept additional training related specifically to Voldemort and the prophecy, provided a goblin representative is present during all such sessions. Dumbledore frowned slightly at this last stipulation. Some matters are too sensitive for non-human ears, Harry. Then they're too sensitive for mine as well, Harry replied flatly. I don't keep secrets from my guardians, headmaster. Not anymore. Another tense silence fell. Dumbledore clearly hadn't expected such firm boundaries from an 8-year-old boy. But Harry was no ordinary 8-year-old, and 18 months of goblin education had taught him the value of clear terms in any negotiation. McGonagall broke the silence with a soft but firm intervention. Albus, the boy's terms are reasonable. If his guardians have already prepared him for the truth about you-know-who, then excluding them from further discussion serves no purpose except to create unnecessary division. Dumbledore looked at his deputy with mild surprise, clearly having expected her support. After a moment's consideration, he inclined his head slightly. Very well. A goblin representative may attend our special training sessions, though I reserve the right to request specific individuals based on the sensitivity of the information. Acceptable, Ragnarok declared before Harry could respond. Rockfist will serve as primary representative, with myself or Nagnok as alternatives when circumstances warrant. The tension in the room eased perceptibly as the core issues found resolution. Details remained to be negotiated. Harry's visiting schedule to Gringotts during term time, coordination between Goblin tutors and Hogwarts professors, security protocols for his transportation, but the fundamental question of guardianship had been settled. As the meeting concluded and the necessary documents were prepared for signing, Dumbledore approached Harry privately while the others were distracted with administrative matters. Harry, he said quietly, I hope in time you'll come to understand that my actions, however misguided they may seem to you now, were born of genuine concern for your welfare and the greater good. Harry met the old wizard's gaze steadily. Headmaster, I don't doubt your intentions. But the road to hell is paved with good intentions, as Muggles say. Your vision of the greater good cost me years of my childhood and could have permanently damaged my magic. Whatever your plans were for me, they'll need to change now. Dumbledore's expression revealed a complex mixture of emotions, regret, respect, and something like wary assessment. Indeed they will. You are, not what I expected to find when we finally met. Good, Harry said simply. I'd hate to be predictable. A ghost of a smile touched Dumbledore's lips. You are very much your mother's son in that respect. Lily Potter was never predictable either. With the formal agreement signed and witnessed by the Aurors, the gathering began to disperse. McGonagall approached Harry before leaving, her stern expression softening slightly. Mr. Potter, she said quietly, I look forward to seeing you at Hogwarts when the time comes. Your parents were exceptional students, both academically and in character. I see that same potential in you. Thank you, Professor, Harry replied sincerely. My mother wrote about you often in her journals. She respected you greatly. McGonagall's composure slipped momentarily, genuine emotion flickering across her features. You have her journals. I'm pleased to hear that. Lily was one of my favorite students, though as a teacher, I shouldn't admit to having favorites. She straightened, regaining her professional demeanor. Well then. Until September 1991, Mr. Potter. As the wizards departed, Harry remained in the conference chamber with Ragnarok and his goblin companions. Only when they were alone did he allow his shoulders to relax, the tension of the confrontation finally easing. Well handled, Ragnarok commented, removing his ceremonial crown with evident relief. Dumbledore expected a child he could guide and mold. He found instead a young wizard capable of negotiation and boundary setting. "He'll still try to influence me at Hogwarts," Harry pointed out. "This isn't over." "Of course not," Griphook agreed, materializing from his disillusioned state now that the wizards had gone. "But you've established your position from strength, not weakness. That changes the dynamic fundamentally." Harry nodded, processing the day's events. From the confrontation with the Dursleys to the face-off with Dumbledore, he had taken significant steps toward true independence. The road ahead remained complicated, but for the first time, he was walking it on his own terms. "The blood oath," he said suddenly, turning to Ragnarok. "The one you proposed yesterday. I want to do it." Ragnarok's eyebrows rose slightly. "You're certain? Such bindings are permanent." "I'm certain," Harry confirmed. "Today proved we need every advantage, every protection. If Voldemort is growing stronger, if Dumbledore has plans within plans, then I need allies I can trust absolutely." Ragnarok studied him for a moment before nodding. "Very well. The ritual can be prepared for tonight's full moon, optimal conditions for blood magic." Harry glanced at Griphook, who had been uncharacteristically silent. "Will you stand with me for it? As my witness?" The young goblin's yellow eyes widened slightly at the honor implied by the request. "I will stand with you," he replied formally. That night, deep beneath Gringotts in a ritual chamber older than the bank itself, Harry stood within a circle of rune-etched stones. Torchlight flickered off walls carved with the history of goblin-wizard relations, some depicting cooperation, others showing the bloody conflicts that had shaped their complicated relationship. Ragnarok officiated, wearing ceremonial robes rather than armor, his voice echoing as he recited the ancient words in gobbledygook. The council members formed an outer circle, while Griphook stood directly across from Harry within the inner ring of stones. "Blood recognizes blood," Ragnarok intoned, switching to English for Harry's benefit. "Magic recognizes magic. Oaths spoken in both bind beyond breaking." He presented an ornate silver dagger to Harry. "Speak your oath as your blood falls upon the ritual stone." Harry took the dagger, its weight solid and reassuring in his hand. He pressed the blade to his palm and drew it across his skin, letting the blood drip onto the central stone as he spoke words he had composed himself, with guidance from Rockfist on proper magical phrasing. "I, Harry James Potter, heir of the House of Potter, offer my blood freely to forge alliance with the Goblin Nation. I acknowledge the protection and wisdom given when others offered only chains and ignorance. I pledge to honor this debt by advocating for just treatment of all magical beings when I claim my place in wizarding society. My magic stands witness to this oath, binding until fulfilled or until death claims me." As his blood touched the stone, it began to glow with golden light that spread outward along channels carved into the floor, connecting to the circle where Griphook stood. The young goblin stepped forward, taking the dagger and making a similar cut across his own palm. "I, Griphook, son of Gornak, warrior of the Goblin Nation, accept the blood alliance of Harry James Potter. I stand as his shield against enemies, his guide in unfamiliar territories, and his truth speaker when falsehood surround him. By my blood and magic, I bind myself to this wizard's cause as he binds himself to mine. Let our strengths combine and our weaknesses balance until death or victory claims us both." Griphook's blood fell upon the same stone, mingling with Harry's. The golden light flared brighter, pulsing in rhythm with their heartbeats. Ragnarok directed them to clasp bleeding hands, completing the circuit. The moment their wounds touched, Harry felt a surge of magic unlike anything he had experienced before, ancient, primal power that recognized no distinction between goblin and wizard, only the intent and sincerity of their oath. The light surrounding them intensified until it was almost blinding, then abruptly contracted, sinking into their joined hands and leaving behind a thin, silvery scar across each of their palms. "The oath is sealed," Ragnarok declared. "Magic has witnessed and approved. Harry Potter is now officially a friend of the Goblin Nation, and Griphook stands as his blood brother and representative among our kind." Harry looked down at the silvery scar on his palm, then at its twin on Griphook's hand. Something fundamental had shifted between them, not just a political alliance but a magical connection that transcended the usual boundaries between their kinds. "Blood brother," he said quietly, testing the weight of the words. Griphook inclined his head slightly. "As Goblin tradition holds, we now share path and purpose. Your enemies are mine. Your victories, mine. Your defeats." He bared his teeth in a fierce grin. "Well, we shall ensure those are few and far between." In the months that followed, Harry's preparation for eventually entering Wizarding Society accelerated. With his legal status secured and his alliance with the Goblins formalized, he divided his time between magical training, political education, and regular excursions to the surface world, carefully disguised, but designed to acclimate him to wizard culture before his eventual attendance at Hogwarts. His wand skills progressed rapidly under the guidance of a retired wand maker the Goblins hired for discreet lessons. The holly and phoenix feather responded to his magic with increasing precision, allowing him to master spells well beyond what most first-years could attempt. "Your core strength exceeds many adult wizards," the wand maker observed during one session. "But raw power without control is dangerous. Focus on finesse over force." Harry took this advice to heart, practicing subtle charms and precise transfigurations rather than simply overwhelming targets with magical strength. By his 9th birthday, he could perform most standard first and second-year Hogwarts curriculum spells with consistent success. His combat training continued as well, with Griphook now serving as his primary sparring partner. Their blood-brother bond enhanced their natural synchronicity, allowing them to anticipate each other's movements in ways that baffled even experienced goblin warriors. "It's not telepathy," Nagnok explained after observing one of their training sessions. "But the oath creates a magical resonance between you. Your cores recognize each other, much like twin wands might." The reference to twin wands reminded Harry of Ollivander's revelation about his wand's connection to Voldemort's. He had shared this information with Ragnarok, who assigned a team of goblin researchers to investigate the implications. "A brother-wand connection is rare but documented," Rockfist reported after weeks of research. "In dueling situations, such wands cannot be forced to fight each other properly. They may create a priori incantatum effect, forcing the reversal of spells. So I couldn't use my wand directly against Voldemort?" Harry asked, concerned about this potential weakness. "Not effectively," Rockfist confirmed. "However, this also applies to him. His wand would be equally ineffective against yours, a stalemate that might prove advantageous in certain scenarios." As his 10th birthday approached, Harry's thoughts turned increasingly toward Hogwarts and the challenges that awaited him there. Despite Dumbledore's grudging acceptance of the Goblin guardianship, Harry harbored no illusions about the headmaster's continued interest in controlling his development. "He believes in the prophecy absolutely," Ragnarok noted during one of their strategy sessions. "To Dumbledore, you are not merely Harry Potter but a crucial piece in a cosmic game against the Dark Lord. He will never truly relinquish his plans for you, only adjust them to current circumstances." "Then I'll need to be prepared for those adjustments," Harry replied, his green eyes reflecting a determination beyond his years. "When I board the Hogwarts Express next year, I won't be the pawn he expected." On the evening before his 10th birthday, Harry and Griphook stood on a hidden balcony high on Gringotts exterior, a vantage point that offered a sweeping view of Diagon Alley below and the London skyline beyond. Few wizards knew such observation posts existed, cleverly concealed within the bank's architecture. "1 year until Hogwarts," Harry said, watching the shoppers move through the alley as dusk approached. "Everything changes then." Griphook nodded, the wind ruffling his sparse hair. "The wizarding world expects Harry Potter the icon, the boy who lived, raised in secret, arriving to fulfill their expectations. They will find instead Harry Potter the reality, goblin-trained, politically aware, and unwilling to be controlled." Harry smiled slightly at this assessment. "They'll be disappointed." "Some will," Griphook agreed. "Others may be intrigued. You'll need allies beyond the Goblin Nation, wizard children your own age who see you for yourself, not the legend. Friends, you mean, Harry said, glancing at his blood brother. Like you. Griphook made a dismissive sound, uncomfortable with the sentiment despite their bond. Tactical allies with emotional components, perhaps. Wizards do seem to require those. Harry laughed, recognizing the affection beneath Griphook's practical exterior. 3 years ago, he couldn't have imagined having anyone he could call friend, let alone a goblin blood brother who would stand beside him against whatever challenges came. Whatever happens at Hogwarts, he said, more seriously now, our oath holds. The goblins freed my magic when Dumbledore tried to chain it. They told me the truth when he offered only lies. I won't forget that, no matter what. Griphook's yellow eyes gleamed in the fading light. Nor will I forget that a wizard child treated me as an equal when most of your kind would see only a creature beneath notice. Our paths are bound now, Harry Potter. Where they lead. He gestured toward the horizon, where stars were beginning to appear. We will discover together. As darkness fell over London, Harry Potter stood at the threshold between worlds, no longer the abused, magically suppressed child from Privet Drive, not yet the student who would walk the halls of Hogwarts. In this moment of transition, one truth remained certain: whatever destiny the prophecy had laid out for him, he would meet it on his own terms, with unexpected allies at his side and power Dumbledore had never intended him to possess. The ancient goblin magic of their blood oath pulsed between them, a reminder that some bonds transcended the divisions wizards had created between magical beings. Perhaps that, as much as any prophecy or magical power, would prove the key to facing the challenges that lay ahead, both from the Dark Lord who would return and the Light Lord who had sought to control him. Happy birthday, Harry Potter, Griphook said as the clock began to strike midnight. May your 11th year bring worthy challenges and honorable victories. Harry smiled, touching the silvery scar on his palm that matched his friend's. For both of us, blood brother. For all of us. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.